I was the weakest student in my entire school. My talent was trash, my family was poor. In a world where monsters destroy cities, people like me are supposed to die first. But everything changed the day I awakened a system that didn't belong to this world. It came from a low-level martial universe, so the things people considered ordinary here looked like miracles to it. A 245 kilogram punch. The system called me a martial grandmaster, riding in a car at 160 kilometers per hour. It rewarded me with a legendary movement technique, making a phone call. Apparently that counted as divine hearing. While other geniuses spent years cultivating, I became stronger simply by living my daily life. But the stronger I became, the more terrifying the truth became. My little sister turned out to be a holy maiden from the upper realm. My teacher came from a family powerful enough to rule nations. A mysterious cult began kidnapping my classmates. And somewhere, among the stars, the people who abandoned me at birth were waiting. I transmigrated to a high martial world, only to awaken a low martial world power-up system. While I, You Xin, remained a student in Ancheng High School, a place crawling with elites, while I was stuck with a mediocre grade C aptitude in the most ordinary class. Shadow Clan monsters ravaged the world, and without martial strength, I was just fodder. I spent the entire winter break desperate to master the new martial cultivation method, but I couldn't even reach the minor completion threshold. During the back-to-school assessment, I threw a pathetic 245 kilogram punch, dead average. Suddenly, a cold voice echoed in my mind. System activated. Strength threshold met. Reward, comprehensive physique enhancement. I was stunned that my weak sauce punch was the pinnacle in this system's eyes, but a warm current soon flooded my body, bumping my mortal body from grade D to grade C and sharpening my senses. In the speed test, I hit 12 meters per second, a feat usually reserved for those at minor completion. The class went into a frenzy, and even our aloof teacher, Chen Zilu, publicly praised me. My rank climbed from 40th to 30th before the practical combat test arrived. Facing Chen Zilu, who had suppressed her realm to entry level, the system chirped, achievement unlocked, sparring with a martial Dao ancestor. I fought like a demon, setting the best record against an entry-level opponent before eventually losing, placing 20th and gaining the Friend of the Grand Master perk. Chen Zilu's teachings now provided a 30% comprehension boost. During her demonstration that afternoon, the 30% buff kicked in, and complex force exertion techniques that used to baffle me suddenly clicked. By the end of class, my joints popped as I hit minor completion. My classmates were floored, but I had more pressing concerns, as I knew my adoptive father was working as a night guard at the Lethal Shadow Hunting Bureau just to pay for my training. I clenched my fists, knowing I had to get stronger to protect them. I lived in the training room from then on, and within a month, I pushed my cultivation to 40% minor completion. Chen Zilu, assuming I'd had a rare talent awakening, pulled me aside to discuss the elite class and the University Martial Alliance, the dream for any student. 6 months later, my body surged with power as I reached major completion, and the system dinged again. Title: Martial Grandmaster. Reward: Mortal Body Grade C to Grade B. New feature: Martial Dao Heavenly Ladder unlocked. I stepped into the ladder's illusion immediately, and found myself in a massage parlor where a girl in a JK uniform, Chen Zilu, approached me. It was a test of will, and I failed, sinking into the fantasy for hours. I didn't care about the failure, I just dove back in, again and again. While others thought I was just slacking off, I was hardening my mind, and by my 47th attempt, I cleared it in 10 minutes. A golden steel rose. Martial Grandmaster. The system showered me with rewards. Beauty Seeks the Dao, a 35% speed boost when fighting opposite-sex opponents, and the see-through talent to scan physical stats. My body jumped to grade B, and with my 10% permanent comprehension boost, I was learning faster than any genius in the elite class. The final exam was the ultimate test, where Li Zhichao, a rich kid who chugged expensive enhancement drugs, felt invincible. When I stepped up, the crowd mocked me, but I channeled my energy boom and hit 610 kilograms. The arena went silent, as I had gained 400 kilograms of force in a single semester. I took second place overall, but the virtual Starry Sky combat test was where I dominated. Thanks to Beauty Seeks the Dao, I slaughtered my way to a 7-0 point score, ranking first in the class. As I walked away, the grade director murmured that a dragon was about to soar. Chen Zilu called me into her office and handed me 30,000 inches cash to prepare for the upcoming school trial. Before leaving, I activated my see-through talent on her, and my blood went cold. Physique: profound body grade A+. Aptitude: Dao bone grade C. She was a monster among monsters. Outside, Li Zhichao cornered me, demanding to know what drugs I'd taken. I didn't take anything, I replied calmly. He seethed, threatening me for next month's trial, but I just shook my head, thinking that a frog in a well really can't imagine the size of the ocean. Back home, I didn't rest, but instead fueled my body with premium ingredients and returned to the heavenly ladder to temper my will. In 1 week, I hit 21% of major completion. It was progress, but in this world, it still felt way too slow. The top student, Zhao Qingli, hit perfection in just 6 months, so I called Chen Zilu to get the truth about how a guy with the same grade B physique managed that. She chuckled and revealed the secret. He was spending 100,000 a month on supplements and, more importantly, using literal star energy to temper his body. My eyes lit up, and I asked, "Teacher, can I do that too?" Before she could answer, a system notification screamed in my brain. Warning, hearing has reached system limits. Milestone achieved. Apparently, hearing sounds from 10 kilometers away was a divine ability, and I was floored. In a low martial world, this would take decades of internal energy cultivation, but for me, I just made a phone call. And it clicked. This system treated modern technology as high-level magic. I was sitting on a gold mine of exploits. I jumped into a taxi and headed for the highway, and as we hit 160 kilometers per hour, the system pinged again. Speed standard of a martial great grandmaster achieved. Title unlocked. Gale step. I couldn't help but laugh, because people spent their entire lives training their movement techniques, and I just unlocked a 100% speed boost for the price of a cab ride. I funneled the 30,000 teacher Chen gave me into top-tier ingredients like tiger and leopard gall, combined with the 30% comprehension boost and daily pestering of Chen Zilu to explain the trickier parts of my cultivation. I pushed my new martial cultivation method from 21% to 41% in a month. Even Li Jichao's drug-fueled training couldn't keep up. The trial day arrived with a 30,000 credit bonus and a high-level secret art on the line. When I walked in, Lin Xuan, an elite from Ancheng First High School, sneered at me like I was dirt under his shoe and called me trash. Even director Zhang Jianwu publicly doubted I had a 30% chance of placing, though Chen Zilu stood by me with a confident 70%. The first trial was a mental gauntlet, where Li Zichao and Lin Xuan cracked under the pressure, traumatized by their own insecurities. When the illusion tried to distract me with half-naked girls, I just yawned. After surviving 47 nights of the Heavenly Ladder's beauty trial, this was light work. I cleared it in a minute, snagging a perfect score, and the auditorium went dead silent. I just made the director look like a fool. Next was the Flowing Light trial, a gauntlet of invisible sword energy. Most students panicked and were eliminated in seconds, but I used my 200% hearing boost to track every incoming blade, weaving through the rain like a ghost. When things got hairy, I popped Gale Step, and I lasted 12 minutes and 55 seconds, second only to the elite genius Zheng Xueqing. The final Thunder Fire trial was hell, as the gas felt like molten ants boring into my cells. Half the hall folded in 15 minutes, and by the 4 or 5 minute mark, only Zheng Xueqing, Xu Lei, and I remained. While they were struggling, I was using the agonizing star energy to push my cultivation to 43%. I finally hit my limit when the fourth difficulty spiked, but I'd already secured 430 points. With a total score of 915, I took second place overall. The elite snobs who had mocked me were speechless, and even Zheng Xueqing walked up to me, eyes sharp, and promised a fair fight in the future. As for Li Jichao, he grabbed my hand in front of everyone, begging me to be his foster father if I'd just share my secret, leaving the crowd in stitches. The glory was short-lived, though. As the moment the high wore off, news hit like a brick. My classmate, Sha Qing, had gone missing. Chen Zilu warned me that the recent string of disappearances was the work of Divine Eagle, a cult that worships the Shadow Clan and turns ordinary people into hollow puppets, with thousands vanishing every year. The news hit me like a physical blow. In a world this dangerous, the only way to protect my family was to get stronger, fast. I returned home with my prize money, determined to improve our lives, but my see-through talent betrayed a shocking secret. Above my sister Yu Ting's head I saw physique, supreme holy body, aptitude, primitive. My little sister, whom I'd been protecting, was secretly a holy maiden of the upper realm. While I was working on homework that night, Yu Ting brought me a basin of water to wash my feet, and the system pinged immediately. Milestone achieved. Upper realm, holy maiden actively serves you. Title unlocked. Holy maiden as servant. Reward, comprehension, transformation, 50% increase. I sat there, stunned, because while other cultivators were literally banging their heads against stone walls to gain even a sliver of insight, I'd just secured a permanent 50% comprehension buff by having my sister wash my feet. If I told anyone, they'd probably lock me up for insanity. Thanks to the boost, I pushed my 8-tribe Thunder Sound Fist to 99% perfection, and my new martial cultivation method to 59% in just 1 month. By the time senior year placement tests arrived, I was a different person. I threw a 960 kilogram punch and hit a speed of 19.1 meters per second, nearly perfection standard. When the combat exam started, I faced the Invigilator's full power assault and pushed to the brink. I broke through. My fist erupted with 8 layers of thunderous sound, and I held my own for a full 3 minutes. I took first place, but my sights were already set higher, as I wasn't scared of Zhao Qingli's supplement-fueled strength, the Divine Eagle cult, or even the Shadow Clan. They were looking at the finish line, but for me, this was just the warm-up. The system settlement confirmed my MVP status with a perfect 120 point score, putting me in 95th place overall, and I was the first ordinary class student in school history to break the top 100. Xu Sisi, who'd previously beaten me, could only sigh in defeat, while even Wang Xiang, the school's third-ranked genius, was watching me from the stands. Zhao Qingli, the queen of the grade, finally took notice, though she wrongly assumed I was just another rich kid buying my success. But when she learned my family's annual income was less than 100,000, her composure finally shattered. Yet, success couldn't mask the darkness, for Xiaoqing was still missing and the divine eagle was growing bolder. I dumped every credit I had into my cultivation, pushing my method to 99% perfection, and then, the shock of a lifetime occurred. Chen Zilu was resigning. I finally learned the truth that my aloof, caring teacher wasn't just a local instructor, but a peerless genius from White Dragon University possessing a Dao bone and a grade A+ profound body who had only been here to reset her mindset. At the gate, she handed me a bottle of Star Ocean nectar, a million credit rarity, and as I took it, the system chimed. Title unlocked, fed by the Grand Master. Item value increased by 200%. The nectar's efficacy tripled in my hands, and I watched her fly away in a private ship, realizing the gap between our worlds was stark and terrifying. But as she disappeared into the clouds, I didn't feel despair, so I just gripped that bottle and tightened my fist, because I was coming for that world too. Getting into a top martial arts university was the only way I could ever stand beside her again. So back at school, I finally broke the last barrier, pushing the new martial cultivation method to perfection. The system rewarded me instantly. My body vaulted from grade B to grade A+, the absolute peak of mortal bodies. Director Zhang Jianwu moved me to the elite class 1, but I wasn't met with cheers, I was met with skepticism. My primitive aptitude was common knowledge, and the prevailing wisdom was that my low star energy absorption efficiency was a death sentence on the martial path. Cao Feng, our elite instructor, urged me to take the safe route with the new martial body tempering method, and even my classmates thought I was delusional for aiming so high. Then, I dropped the bomb when I chose the new martial advanced method, a yellow-rank high-grade technique that demanded immense talent and was notoriously difficult. The room went silent, especially since even Zhao Qingli, the school's top genius, had only dared to start with the foundation establishment method, making it seem like I was asking to be shattered into pieces. Zhao Qingli actually took pity on me, giving me a bottle of Earth Dragon potion that usually sold for 3,000 credits. They didn't know that my grade A+ body had increased my efficiency tenfold, and my stacking comprehension boosts made the advanced method look like child's play. Within hours, I'd mastered 10% of its essence, and I injected the potion and burned through the rest of the day, skyrocketing my progress from 10% to 25% in a single hour. My nights were spent in the second level of the martial Dao Heavenly Ladder, a hellscape of simulated pain being skinned and stretched for hours on end, but I endured it for 3.5 hours to clear the trial. The reward was worth the agony. Title: Finding Joy in Sorrow. Now, pain didn't hinder me, it fueled me, boosting my attributes and keeping my mind razor sharp. So while others thought I was just some obsessed masochist, my willpower was becoming harder than iron. By the time the Starry Sky baptism arrived, I had hit the entry realm with the advanced method, and the school exploded in shock as I'd smashed every record in our history. The baptism itself was brutal, as star energy scraped through my meridians like jagged blades, and within hours, most students had crawled out, broken and weeping. By the 7-hour mark, fewer than 100 remained, and even Wang Xiang had tapped out, leaving only Zhao Qingli and me from our school. People thought I was nearing my limit, but they were wrong, because as the pain intensified, my finding joy in sorrow talent maxed out. My absorption speed didn't drop, it surged from 100 to 500 wisps per minute, and I actually moved to a more turbulent spot in the pool just to soak up more energy. The leaders on the platform were speechless, as my absorption speed was eclipsing Zhao Qingli's. After 10 hours, Lin Yushu, the top dog from Ancheng first, finally hit his limit, and half an hour later, Zhao Qingli filled her Guanyuan acupoint and bowed out. I was the last one left. To the onlookers, my survival was a mystery, for they didn't understand that this baptismal pain was a vacation compared to the heavenly ladder. I didn't just sit there. With my Guanyuan acupoint packed with 10,000 wisps of star energy, I started refining it right there in the pool. While everyone else scrambled for the exits, terrified that another second of exposure would tear them apart, I just leaned in deeper. I treated the baptism pool like a private training camp, staying for 7 days and 7 nights to achieve 100% refinement. When I finally emerged, Director Zhang Jianwu and the new professional, Liu Baimu, stared at me as if I were an alien. They were floored when I mentioned refining nearly 10,000 wisps of star energy for a primitive aptitude student. That was practically impossible. Liu Baimu was so impressed by my mental fortitude that he invited me to apply for the reserved new professional exam, convinced I had a massive future ahead. Back home, I accidentally shattered my living room wall with a casual, long-distance punch. My sister and mother thought it was an earthquake. My system, meanwhile, was working overtime. After my hearing broke through its limits, I unlocked Cheat Ear, allowing me to crank my senses up to 1,0% so I could hear grass rustling 100 meters away. A later video call with Chen Zilu triggered Supervision Eye, letting me spot minute details from 100 miles away, demonstrating that while other cultivators spent decades unlocking these transcendent abilities, I just made a few phone calls. But skills don't pay the bills, so I needed 150,000 for upcoming baptisms and specialized potions, which led me to hit the mission board. A 4-star mission, to wipe out Divine Eagle remnants in the Chengyun mountain range, offered a 100,000 credit payout, and although most students wouldn't touch a 4-star mission with a 10-foot pole, and Wang Xiang called me a lunatic, I knew wealth favors the bold. I convinced Wang Xiang and Zhao Qingli to join me, forming an Ancheng Third High School power trio. We sped to the mountains in Zhao Qingli's luxury car, but my new senses picked up trouble immediately. Lin Yushu of Ancheng First High was already there with his own team, and a powerhouse from Ancheng High soon showed up. What started as a simple extermination mission had spiraled into a crowded, lethal mess. Suddenly, two figures, the black and white elders, burst from a cave, their first soul-level pressure hitting us like a tidal wave and suffocating everyone below their rank. They clashed with Wan Yao Yang, their combined auras sending shockwaves through the forest, and before we could retreat, 6 half-step, first soul assassins in black surrounded our trio. Zhao Qingli was holding her own against 3 of them, but she was visibly tiring, and Wang Xiang and I stood back to back, desperately blocking the others. My arm guards were notched and my muscles were screaming. I had to end this, and fast. "Brother Wang, hold one off," I yelled. I ditched my small knife, rolled along the forest floor, and lunged toward the remaining 2 assassins, making Wang Xiang look like he'd seen a ghost as he screamed, "You Xin, are you crazy?" Striking out barehanded against 2 half-step, first soul killers was, by any reasonable metric, suicide. The assassins sneered, their blades arcing toward my head, but I didn't flinch. I caught the momentum of their strikes. My new martial cultivation method's force deflection technique, stripping their power away layer by layer. They surged in, desperate to finish me, but I stopped playing defense and stepped into their guard, ready to turn the tables. I lunged forward, the 8-tribe thunder sound fist, breaking through the assassin's defense to slam into his chest. In the same breath, the other man in black drove his blade into my shoulder, and though the pain was blinding, I ignored it, using the momentum to trade blow for blow. My beauty seeks, the Dao title flared, sending a 35% speed boost and 50% damage spike coursing through my veins, and my fist, moving like a blur, hammered into the same spot twice. With a sickening crunch of shattered bone, the man slumped over, dead. Before his companion could even blink, he chanted an incantation, his skin darkening with the patterns of the divine eagle's secret art. His power surged by 30% as he roared and charged, and I took another blade to the shoulder, the wound screaming. But the pain triggered my Finding Joy in Sorrow title. Attributes flared, and I abandoned defense, becoming a human wrecking ball. I unleashed a barrage of over 10 punches, each boosted by thunderous sound and damage bonuses, until his chest caved in completely. Wang Xiang stared at me, eyes wide, and said, "Holy shit, You Xin, you're a monster when you kill." Ignoring the blood dripping from my shoulder, I ordered them to split up and scavenge. I raided the stronghold, eventually finding 20 bottles of Earth Dragon and Bear Dragon potions, 60,000 credits worth of loot, but then I kicked a black goat hairpin and my blood ran cold, for it belonged to Xia Qing, the classmate who had vanished. Searching further, I found her photo under a bed, realizing she had been kidnapped and was likely still alive, though likely assimilated based on the room's setup. I handed the photo to director Zhang Jianwu, who sighed, dismissing the possibility of rescue by saying, "She's likely been assimilated body and mind. Protect yourself and live for the present." As we prepared to leave, Zhang Jianwu noticed my bone-deep wound and pulled me aside into his car, his demeanor shifting from praise to business. "I have a proposal. Apply for the reserve new professional exam, succeed, and you'll get 20 bonus points for the college entrance exam." My heart hammered, for 20 points was the difference between a good school and a dream university, like Penglai or Donghai, a gap that would usually cost hundreds of thousands in resources, making it a golden ticket. The next morning, I met Wang Xiang to submit our mission, and the moment I logged the details, the system pinged. New milestone, completed first sect mission. Title unlocked, striking a stone with an egg. I froze, as the title granted a 100% damage boost and an unstoppable bleeding effect when fighting higher-ranked opponents, making my previous Beauty Seeks the Dao buff look like a participation trophy. As Wang Xiang clapped me on the shoulder, asking to team up again, I barely heard him because I was too busy staring at the absolute power now humming in my veins. I caught up with Zhao Qingli as she entered the classroom and said, "Class monitor, I've got all 20 bottles of the loot." She nodded, opening an exquisite briefcase on her desk, and a rich, herbal fragrance filled the air as I saw one catty, yellow-rank, high-grade martial ginseng sitting inside. My heart skipped a beat, for at 20,000 credits per 100 grams, this root was worth a cool 100,000. "It's 500 grams, she said, her voice betraying a hint of pride, "so I couldn't find a 200-gram portion, and you should think of the extra as a gift." We both knew the truth that it was her way of thanking me for saving her life, so we exchanged a silent, knowing look before she added, "Martial ginseng is a game-changer for bottlenecks, so don't waste it." After school, she handed me the 50,000 credit mission payout, which finally gave me enough to cover a starry sky baptism, and I used 10,000 of it to buy 10 bottles of Earth Dragon potion from her before heading home. My life fell into a grueling rhythm of academic classes, followed by endless sessions in the martial arts training room. I was shocked to find that my shoulder wound previously, a deep, bone-grinding gash, had completely healed in just a week, so I doubled down on the bone-forging method while feeling my power spike daily, noting that the toughness of a grade A+ physique was no joke. The next day, Zhang Jianwu's black sedan pulled up at the school intersection, and I slid into the passenger seat while he tossed a 7-inch golden dagger, heavy and etched with faint, glowing patterns, into my lap. A star weapon, he said coolly, explaining that it amplifies star energy, and he told me he was lending it to me so I could get a feel for the power. Holding a weapon worth hundreds of thousands, I channeled my energy as he instructed, and the moment my star energy touched the blade, a violent, predatory urge clawed at my chest. I gripped the hilt tighter because, although everyone thought I was just another student struggling to keep pace, I knew the rules of this world were eventually going to break under my influence with this in my hand. As the dagger hummed and vibrated in my palm, I felt the terrifying synergy that had allowed Wan Yaoyang to slaughter enemies effortlessly. Don't waste your energy like that unless it's a life or death moment, Zhang Jianwu warned. 3 hours later, we arrived in the bustling metropolis of Qingyang City for the reserve new professional exam, where the registration hall was a nightmare of talent because every candidate possessed a grade A physique, the kind of prodigies who only appear in the top 10 of Ancheng High. Then, Lin Yushu, the tall, horse-faced elite from Ancheng First, approached and invited me to team up for a hunt, his voice dropping to a whisper as he said, "Watch your back, as it's not just the Shadow Clan you need to worry about in this assessment, it's the students who'll use them to stab you in the back." I nodded, accepting his offer, and the game was on. A sudden ripple of tension cut through the hall as the crowd parted and a girl in a purple dress, Tong'er, sauntered in. She looked soft and adorable, but the way candidates scrambled to give her space told a different story, so I scanned her with my see-through talent and saw she was grade C, profound body with a grade C, Dao Bone, the infamous Demoness Tong and top dog of Qingyang High. Lin Yushu stared at her, drawing a sharp, annoyed retort from the girl, and since rumor had it that anyone she fought was humiliated and their dignity ground into the dirt, I quietly backed away, desperate not to be associated with that walking disaster. Then, her eyes locked onto me, and she smiled while asking where I was from, but when I mentioned Ancheng, she immediately asked if I knew Wan Yaoyang. Lin Yushu and I exchanged a quick, panicked look and shook our heads in unison, because telling her we'd sent Wan Yaoyang to the police station would be like lighting a fuse in a powder keg. Funny, she mused, her smile sharpening. I heard he got trashed in Ancheng and hauled off to the station. The venue erupted in murmurs, and before the shock could settle, Wan Yaoyang himself strode into the hall with a heavy sword box strapped to his back. His presence crashed down on the room like a falling mountain, but Tong'er just flicked her wrist, casually neutralizing his pressure. I stood there, feigning ignorance, and offered a polite, "I've heard so much about you," which made Wan Yaoyang's face go gray with suppressed rage. Tong'er leaned in, smelling like expensive perfume and ozone, and whispered, "I can help you deal with him," to which I didn't hesitate and accepted. At 5 p.m., registration closed, and with thousands of candidates clawing for just 3 reserved new professional slots, the legendary instructor Chen Feng stepped onto the stage and dropped the hammer. We had 5 days to kill 1,000 Shadow Clan projections to qualify for the final assessment. The next morning, the hunt began, and by midnight, I was at the number 21 Starry Sky Tunnel, where Lin Yushu was already there with 4 female candidates. When they saw I was from Ancheng, their eyes practically dripped with contempt, dismissing me as a competitor rather than an ally. But I didn't say a word because I knew that in this arena, talk was cheap and strength was the only currency that mattered. The lockdown gates groaned open, unleashing a freezing wind laden with the guttural shrieks of the Shadow Clan, and I was the first one through the threshold. A 50-meter-long tunnel stretched out before me, and as a black tide of monsters swarmed forward, I channeled my star energy into the golden dagger and launched myself into the fray, my blade tearing through the darkness in a brilliant golden arc and dropping several creatures instantly. Shadow Clan monsters are notoriously hard to kill, but I kept the pressure on, turning every parry into a strike, and though we cleared 50 of them in 30 minutes, the respite didn't last as a fresh wave of hundreds surged out of the gloom. Without a second thought, I dove back into the black tide, and 6 hours later, my teammates were huddled in the corner, lungs burning and gasping for air, while I remained in the center of the storm, still carving my way through the darkness. 12 hours of relentless combat pushed me to the brink of collapse, but just as my body screamed for rest, the system chimed. Milestone achieved. Continuous combat for 12 hours. Title unlocked. The more you fight, the braver you get. Reward. Stamina consumption reduced by 30%. Continuous combat restores stamina. Attack speed boosts up to 50%. A surge of vitality flooded my veins, washing away every trace of fatigue, so I tightened my grip on the dagger and dove back into the slaughter, my battle intent stacking with every strike. Shadow Clan members that nearly rivaled First Soul experts fell before my onslaught, and for 5 days straight, I maintained a terrifying pace of carnage. By the time I finished, my kill count hit 2,340, obliterating the assessment requirements, and amidst the bloodshed, I pushed the 8-tribe Thunder Sound Fist to major completion, unlocking the Thunder Sound domain. Unknown to me, the higher-ups at the Unified Examination Bureau were monitoring the entire display, and Director Lee had already greenlit my priority admission. When I woke from a brief rest, the system pinged again. Milestone achieved. Slain over 2,000 demonic members. Title unlocked. Exorcising demons and defending the Tao. Reward, level 1, prosperous fortune. By the next day, the field of thousands had been whittled down to fewer than 200, and Tang Huochan announced the special assessment consisting of the primordial trial, followed by a starry sky, melee, which would axe 100 more and leave only 90 to duke it out for the 3 coveted admission spots. We moved to the second floor, where a magnificent baptism pool awaited, and Lin Yushu leaned in to whisper that the primordial star energy here is hundreds of times denser than a standard baptism, and the pain is astronomical. I didn't care because months of torture on the martial Dao heavenly ladder had turned me into a masochist for pain. As the purple mist of primordial star energy flooded the room, the candidates around me crumpled into agony, but I stood tall because I realized this wasn't just a trial, it was a massive opportunity to cleanse my meridians and purge hidden cultivation flaws. I immediately accelerated my new martial advance method, turning myself into a living vortex as I began devouring the mist with reckless abandon. The entire venue fell silent, while Lin Yushu yelled that I was suicidal. Wan Yaoyang sneered at my apparent death wish, and even Su Tong'er stared in absolute disbelief, thinking I was losing my mind. They had no idea that for me, this torturous primordial star energy was nothing more than a Tuesday morning warm-up. For what they saw as an impassable wall, I saw as the next rung on my ladder to the top. My eyes flared with golden light, and I doubled the speed of my cultivation cycle, pulling the thick, violet mist straight into my Guanyuan acupoint with an energy vortex that hit my reserves like a supernova. Warning, Guanyuan acupoint capacity at 99%. I slammed the brakes on my technique with cold sweat soaking my back, realizing that if I had pushed even a fraction harder, my meridians would have disintegrated and left me a crippled wreck. It was the irony of my primitive aptitude, the same slow, deliberate absorption that used to be my greatest hurdle, now kept me balanced on the knife's edge of survival. I hadn't just survived, I had harnessed that violent surge to refine my bones and flesh. Around me, the pool echoed with agonizing roars, as genius after genius buckled under the erosion and forfeited. So, by the 30-minute mark, the field of 150 had been pruned down to just 90 survivors. Primordial trial concluded. Advancing to the final assessment, the proctor announced. I exhaled, feeling the newfound, ferocious power thrumming beneath my skin, as my physical strength had just undergone a qualitative leap. High above on the glass platform, I caught Director Lee watching me with a rare, approving smirk, murmuring that my martial will was a cut above, but I didn't blame him for noticing because I was just getting started. The 5-minute break evaporated, and we were ushered into the third-floor hall, where hundreds of virtual reality pods waited. 90 candidates. The cold, synthesized voice announced, divided into 3 groups of 30, and only the last survivor of each group advances. The room erupted as everyone frantically scoped out the competition, hoping to avoid the big 3, Su Tong'er, Wan Yaoyang, and Yexiu Luo, whose reputations were the stuff of nightmares. I found an empty pod and climbed in, ignoring the dismissive glares from those who pegged me as a fluke, a nobody lucky enough to survive the trial who didn't think I was worth the dirt on their boots. As the virtual system initialized and I materialized in the arena, number 1, my pulse quickened, for the final stage of the hunt had begun. While Su Tong'er and Wan Yaoyang weren't in my arena, I was matched against Yexiu Luo, a monster nearing the second soul realm, and Song Wanbai, another top talent from Ancheng High. The system leveled the playing field, setting everyone to new martial cultivation method perfection, and the brawl began instantly. As others tore into each other, I played it cool, engaging a yellow-haired youth in a sluggish, defensive dance while sensing that the higher-ups in the monitoring room were already writing me off as a lucky fraud. Across the arena, Yexiu Luo was a force of nature, turning contenders into red mist as his raw power crushed everyone who dared to group up on him. So within 10 minutes, only 3 of us remained, me, Yexiu Luo, and Song Wanbai. Yexiu Luo stood with his arms crossed, radiating a terrifying, casual arrogance, and sneered, "Come at me together, or fight for the right to lose to me." Before he could finish, I launched myself at him like a guided missile, trading blows where I took a devastating punch to the ribs but slammed my fist square into his face in return. I felt my own bones snap, and I went flying with blood painting the floor, while Yexiu Luo looked genuinely stunned, unable to grasp why nobody would be so eager to die. Song Wanbai tried to intervene, but Yexiu Luo crippled her in 2 moves. Now it was just me, so I surged back into the fray, ignoring the agony of torn muscles and splintered bone. My Finding Joy in Sorrow title flared, my attributes spiking as the pain intensified, while Beauty Seeks the Tao kicked in, ballooning my attack speed by 35%. I was burning through my limits, and every time he landed a hit, I came back harder, faster, and more vicious. Impossible! Yexiu Luo roared, his composure finally crumbling into panic. He was the pinnacle of our realm, yet I was overwhelming him, so I unleashed the full force of my 8-tribe thundersound fist, the shockwaves overlapping until I punched clean through his chest. He gasped, eyes wide with shock, before his avatar dissipated into light. Arena No. 1 winner, You Xin. The announcement rocked the dome, and up in the monitoring room, Director Lee leaped to his feet, eyes wide, gasping. The more he's injured, the stronger he gets. As he shouted for my treatment level to be immediately upgraded. As I stepped out of the virtual pod, the hall fell deathly silent until the whispers started, acknowledging that I, the nobody from Ancheng, had taken down the arena's king. Yexiu Luo walked up, but instead of the revenge everyone expected, he offered a respectful hand, saying, "You're strong, I'm no match for you in this realm, and we'll fight again." I shook his hand firmly and replied, "Count on it." Tang Huo-chan descended, her voice cutting through the noise as she announced, "The assessment is over, admitted, Su Tong'er, Wan Yaoyang, You Xin, and Ye Shu Luo. So report to the 21st floor." My heart hammered against my ribs, for the quota was mine, and the resources, the prestige, and the path to the stars were all finally within reach. Lin Yushu approached with his expression a chaotic mix of awe and disbelief, reminding me that he'd scored 700 on his monthly exams and still failed, while I'd entered with 690 and walked away the only survivor from Ancheng High. I gave him a modest pat on the shoulder, calling it a fluke, and turned toward the elevator to meet the three geniuses who had just reshaped my world. Wan Yaoyang sneered at my luck, and Su Tong'er, her charm as intoxicating as her Dao bone aptitude, strolled over to reveal I had defeated Yi Shu Luo, whispering with a playful wink, "This lady remembers you." The effect was instantaneous, and even my mind, hardened by 100 trials, swayed under her influence. It wasn't until the elevator doors sealed that I snapped out of it, cold sweat slicking my back, and I clenched my fists, realizing the psychic weight of a Dao bone aptitude was terrifying and I couldn't afford to be this vulnerable again. In an exclusive office on the 21st floor, Tang Huo-chan, an instructor, with a gaze as sharp as her presence, slid a contract across the desk and said, "Welcome to the team." My breath hitched. For a level 2 reserve new professional contract meant a monthly subsidy of 100,000 credits, 3 free Starry Sky baptisms, and a permanent safety net. Tang Huo-chan smiled, noting, "The bureau bumped you to level 2 specifically because of your performance. While Ye Shulo was level 1, Wan Yaoyang matched my level 2, and Su Tong'er held a level 3, which was no surprise since that girl was a monster. But my focus remained on the college entrance exam, as the gap between my 690 points and the 890 required for Penglai University felt like an impossible chasm that even director Zhang Jianwu looked skeptical about over dinner. "Are you still set on Penglai?" he asked. "I won't change my goal," I replied, my voice hard as iron, "for if the road is a chasm, I'll carve my own path." Zhang Jianwu paused, then set his glass down and spoke the name, the Star Ocean Divine Map. The name struck me like a physical blow, for it was the same inscription from the Golden Palace of my dreams, and he explained it was a mysterious trial space discovered during the Blue Star Connection that provided a massive boost to base talent for those who passed. It was the only way to bridge my 200-point deficit, provided I reached the first soul realm, so I finally had a target breakthrough, then conquer the map. After dinner, I visited my adoptive father, You Dahai, at the Shadow Hunting Bureau, and seeing him working nights in a hazardous zone just to bankroll my training tore at my heart. When I told him about the level 2 certification, the honest man was speechless with joy, and looking at his calloused, weary hands, I knew I needed to get stronger fast. Back at the hotel, sleep was out of the question, so I drilled the new martial advanced method until my clothes were soaked through, feeling my progress edge upward. But that night, I didn't reach for the martial Dao heavenly ladder. I laid back and surrendered to sleep, desperate for clarity. The dream was vivid, showing my biological father carrying me as a child into that golden palace of the Star Ocean Divine Map, where he vowed, "Once this is done, we'll see who dares challenge us." The memory shifted to a woman named Sister Meow, sneering at him as a village boor, before I was abandoned in the shadows of the street. I woke up gasping with the pieces clicking into place, for my origins were inextricably tied to this map. I didn't waste another second, so I sat cross-legged and dived into the martial Dao heavenly ladder, letting the illusions refine my will until it was unbreakable. I didn't notice Zhang Jianwu in the next room, staring out at the night sky as he placed a call to Chen Zilu at White Dragon University. When Chen Zilu heard that I'd secured a level 2 reserve new professional certification, especially after I'd only managed 520 points on our last check-in, the typically composed genius was floored, and once I hung up, she didn't hesitate to contact her mentor. The black-robed elder was initially dismissive, but the moment she uttered the words low-grade primitive aptitude, his eyes lit with terrifying intensity, and he agreed instantly to hand-deliver my profile to Penglai University's admissions office. Alone in the moonlight, Chen Zilu traced the stars outside her window, wondering just how much of a shock I'd cause in 3 months. The morning of the first, I rode back to Ancheng in Zhang Jianwu's sedan as a news flash played on the car's screen, broadcasting my achievement across the city as a record-breaking milestone for Ancheng, and I was surprised at the speed of the publicity. "Don't sell yourself short," Zhang Jianwu chuckled, adding that I was the only level 2 inches a decade, and had not just brought honor to our school, but put Ancheng on the map for the entire Zhishan province. A high-standard rally awaited me upon arrival, and I received a commendation and a symbolic 500 credit reward. But once the crowd cleared, Zhang Jianwu pulled me into a private room where City Lord Song and Principal Wang were already waiting. "You've done us proud," City Lord Song said, sliding a card toward me and telling me to consider this 200,000 credit personal grant a down payment on my future. My heart hammered, for 6 months ago this sum was a fantasy, but as I thanked them, the City Lord grew solemn and stated that level 2 was just the start, and he wanted to see my name shake the entire Zhishan province one day. I met his gaze, my own burning with ambition, and declared that I would do more than that and make Ancheng resound across the entire Blue Star Federation. His entourage chuckled at the perceived arrogance, but City Lord Song cut them off, scolding them for their lack of vision, because youth was meant for grand ambitions. Back in the office, my bracelet chimed with an invitation from Jihai Martial Arts University, offering a grade A contract, but when I looked to Zhang Jianwu for advice, he simply told me to wait. 3 days of silence followed until a notification from Pengla University finally flashed on my screen. A grade C contract with 800,000 annual credits and prime cultivation resources that vastly outclassed Jihai's offer. I was baffled as to why the top-tier Penglai would take interest given my base aptitude, so Zhang Jianwu chuckled over the phone and asked if Chen Zilu had a hand in this. The realization hit me that Chen Zilu had been a silent guardian throughout my journey, nurturing my growth from the shadows. I tried calling her to thank her, but when the line remained silent, I sent a long, heartfelt message instead and clenched my fists, resolving that I wouldn't just sign this contract but would work until I was worthy of the faith she had placed in me. I signed for the grade C offer, immediately setting my sights on an even higher tier once the entrance exams arrived. 3 days later, I began my second journey toward the Starry Sky baptism, ready to reach further than ever before. In the baptism pool, I watched Zhao Qingli break his mortal shackles, surging into the first soul realm to become a true Starry Sky martial artist, and he spared me a cold, arrogant glance before saying, "Trying to surpass me before the exam? Don't even think about it." I only smiled and replied, "Then I'll beat you in university." I remained in the baptismal waters for 5 days, refining 30,000 wisps of star energy until my body hummed with lethal potential, and back home, I finally bit into the yellow rank martial ginseng. It tasted like concentrated earth and bitterness, but as it dissolved, the medicinal energy flooded my veins, sharpening my perception until I could see the internal flow of my own meridians. My cultivation speed surged, and the progress bar for my new martial advanced method began to climb aggressively. From that point on, my life became a grind consisting of training sessions at the Unified Examination Bureau, intensive study, and nightly sessions in the martial Tao Heavenly Ladder to forge my will through hellish illusions. Everyone saw me as a lucky dark horse, having no idea I was building my foundation in the dark. By late May, the final monthly exam arrived, and the results board sparked a riot in the school hallways. Zhao Qingli held first with 888 points, and I sat firmly in second with 839, meaning I had jumped 4 places in a single month. Zhao Qingli approached me with an unreadable expression and offered congratulations on second place, to which I replied that I was still a long way behind the class monitor. "Where are you applying?" he asked abruptly, and when I told him Penglai University, his eyes widened in shock because he knew the cutoff would be over 890, and I faced a massive gap even with my bonus. "I'm challenging the Star Ocean Divine Map after I hit the first soul," I said with a steady gaze. He frowned, stunned, and told me that the map required an insider's recommendation or a top-tier university backing, noting that most people couldn't even find a way to register. "A registration requirement won't stop me," I stated with determination, and when I realized the gatekeepers were untouchable consortium elites, Zhao Qingli surprisingly leaned in to whisper that he could help. I didn't ask how, but just promised him a meal if he pulled it off, and though he left with his head held high, I didn't know he was calling his sister, Zhao Jingxue, a top-tier prodigy in the provincial capital. She was cold and initially refused to waste a mentor's favor on a social mismatch, but after hearing I was a level 2 reserve new professional, she finally relented with the catch that I had to pay 100,000 credits. When Zhao Qingli relayed the demand, he expected me to hesitate, but I didn't because even though 100,000 was a fortune, it was the price of my future. "Deal." Zhao Qingli's eyes softened as his usual arrogance was replaced by a hint of respect, and he waved off the payment, insisting, "I only pay if I succeeded." That night, my device pinged with the approval, and I didn't celebrate, instead redoubling my training for the trial in Qingyang City 10 days away. 3 days into the Starry Sky baptism, I stepped into the pool with a bottle of Crazy Dragon Potion worth 30,000 credits, and pushed my body to the breaking point 90%, 95%, 99% before downing the liquid. The potion burned like fire, providing the raw power I needed to shatter my mortal shackles, and a dull roar echoed through my marrow as my cells unlocked and absorbed 100,000 wisps of star energy in one breath. When I stood, a majestic martial aura blasted outward, freezing everyone in the pool in their tracks, and the system chimed. Unlocked title, Martial Great Grandmaster. Reward, Dao Bone Reconstruction. Mortal Body Grade A+, promoted to Profound Body Grade D+. I stared at my panel, ecstatic that I had reached a profound body grade that even top geniuses from Qingyang only reached at a lower level. I didn't waste a second, and back home, I triggered the Martial Tao Heavenly Ladder, climbed to the 3rd level, and dived into the void of the assessment. The system challenged me to find my own Tao, and after 5 days of drowning in illusions of thunder to grasp the mandate of heaven, I was exhausted and let my mind wander as the scene shifted to a foot massage parlor. As the technician worked, the pressure on my acupoints triggered a flow of qi that perfectly mirrored the new martial advanced method, and I laughed that foot massage is a Tao, a realization that shattered the illusion. Congratulations on passing the 3rd level. Reward, Heart of Tao Comprehension, Comprehension plus 50%. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my room but a hospital bed with a ventilator in my mouth, and my sister, You Xin, was sobbing while my parents looked hollowed out with worry because I had been in a coma for 5 days. The Star Ocean Divine Map certification was only 2 days away, but I signed my own discharge papers against the doctor's advice because I had a family to protect and a future to claim. After assuring my worried friends via phone that I just overslept, I locked my door and pulled up my panel to see my transformative stats. Physique, profound body grade D+. I stepped into a stance and began the 8-tribe thunder sound fist, and when my sister finally pulled me out of the trance 6 hours later, my progress had jumped from 79% to 91%. In half a day, I had achieved what took others months, and with 2 days left before the certification, I spent the night in the martial Tao heavenly ladder letting my will be hardened by the dual blessing of my profound body and heart of Tao comprehension. 20 hours of continuous cultivation vanished like minutes, and by the time dawn broke on June 4th, my 8-tribe thunder sound fist had achieved perfection, and my new martial advanced method hit 25% minor completion. As I stared at the perfected skill on my panel, a singular thought burned in my chest. Star Ocean Divine Map, I'm coming for you. Zhang Jianwu drove me to the trial site in Xinjiang City with pre-match advice I didn't need, and I stepped out of the car, looking up at the black octagonal building and telling him, wait for my good news, as I strode into the hall with ironclad resolve. Serial number 15, and I found Su Tong'er's name listed alongside me, along with Yun Qinger, the top student from Mingcheng Middle School. My see-through talent laid Yun Qinger bare physique, profound body, aptitude, Dao bone grade C-, and though she greeted me with a timid smile, I knew she thought I was just another poor kid from Ancheng out of his depth. Even Su Tong'er kindly warned me to keep my cards close to my chest, assuming I was here to gamble on luck, unaware that this trial was a path I had already walked 1,000 times in the depths of my own mind. Minutes later, the three of us stepped onto the energy star array, and a blinding flash of light swallowed us, whisking us into the trial space. High in the monitoring hall, Director Lu Feng frowned at my stats and muttered that I was a waste of a recommendation quota, dismissing me as a failure before I'd even begun. Then, the monitor chimed, candidate number 15, You Xin, has passed the martial will certification. Silence crashed over the hall because it hadn't even been 3 minutes, and while the elites were still struggling in the first stage's illusions, I had obliterated the entire path. A female staff member gasped, noting my martial will was on par with a third soul expert, and Lu Feng's eyes lit with the sudden, frantic realization that he'd underestimated a powerhouse. Meanwhile, in the trial space, I moved to the practical combat stage, where 7-horned monster girls roared and lunged at me, and although my objective was damage-free clearance, the scarlet palm wind unleashed by the lead monster nearly shredded my meridians. I stopped playing it safe, and as the Beauty Seeks the Tao title flared to grant me a 35% speed boost and a 50% damage buff, I surged forward like a phantom, my fists turning into a torrential storm of starlight as I smashed through the chests of the first 2 attackers. The remaining 5 went berserk and ignited their own blood, but they were already dead. So I channeled the 8-tribe thunder sound fist, landing strikes with the deafening weight of a falling sky until the rest were reduced to gore within seconds. After I completed the damage-free clearance and was told to continue forward, I didn't even catch my breath because I was just getting started. I paused to recalibrate my breathing, needing every ounce of stamina for the ultimate stage, which required defeating a clone stronger than myself without taking damage. My heart skipped a beat because, although the strongest opponent is always one's own reflection, and this one was superior in every metric, I had banked my survival on carefully hoarded trump cards. I stepped into the arena where my clone opened its eyes, devoid of humanity, a cold, precision-engineered killing machine, and the battle began instantly. It moved like a lightning strike, opening with the 8-tribe thunder sound fist, and because its form was technically perfect and its power output greater than mine, we traded dozens of blows as it pushed me toward the arena's edge. Just as my heel caught the boundary, I stomped down to activate my down-to-earth ability, turning my legs into a rock-solid foundation immune to knockback. Rooted like an ancient tree, I stood my ground, and when we clashed again, I waited for the opening and unleashed, striking a stone with an egg, triggering a 100% damage boost against my higher realm opponent. My counterpunch doubled in power and sent the clone flying, but realizing the clone had stabilized the 50% damage boost I relied on, I decided I couldn't play it safe and closed the distance to force a trigger by deliberately trading blows. Finding joy in sorrow activated as my attributes increased with my intensifying pain, and with my aura flaring to transform my desperation into raw, unadulterated violence, I locked into a final exchange and shattered my reflection into dust with one explosive, thunderous punch. After I passed the certification with scores of 100, 100, and 61 for a total of 261, the monitoring hall erupted in disbelief because a youth with primitive aptitude had beaten a trial with a sub-30% success rate, leaving Director Lu speechless. I was unaware of this, however, as a golden river of starlight from the celestial depths enveloped me, dissolving my physical limits and restructuring my Guanyuan acupoint from a sphere into an hourglass that compressed my star energy into a density I hadn't dreamed possible. I reached out and snatched the Earth-rank secret art, 9 luminaries, star treading, which flooded my brain with information about a technique capable of world-ending destruction and serving as a foundation that would carry me to the absolute pinnacle of martial arts. Back in the real world, Tong'er and You Xin looked at me as if I were a ghost because I had actually succeeded. I was ushered into the office of Liu Beichang, head of the Star Ocean Consortium, who offered a 500,000 credit sponsorship that Tong'er and You Xin promptly swatted down on my behalf before leaving. After they left, Liu Beichang leaned in with a predatory smile to offer 1,000,000 credits to buy out my career, but I pushed the contract back unmoved, causing him to look stunned, though he honored the initial 500,000 credit transfer anyway. When he asked how I had beaten the clone, I gave a vague answer about martial bone awakening, then shifted the conversation to ask if he knew the origin of the 9 luminaries star energy required by my secret art. Liu Beichang's smile vanished and his pupils constricted as he blurted out, "You obtained a starry sky secret art." The room grew cold as it became clear this technique wasn't just a powerful skill, but a fragment of a lost, distant civilization that sat far outside the comprehension of Blue Star's martial world. As he struggled to offer information he didn't possess, I realized I hadn't just acquired a new path, I had stumbled upon a mystery that spanned the entire galaxy. The gap between human-made secret arts and those of the starry sky became clear to me. For while my perfected 8-tribe Thunder Sound Fist barely scratched the surface of star energy's potential, starry sky secret arts could channel that power without loss or even double it. My anticipation spiked, and with the college entrance exam 2 days away, I knew I had to master that mysterious 9 luminaries star treading. In the office, the staff was baffled by my rejection of the 1,000,000 credit offer, but Liu Beichang just shook his head, knowing that a genius gifted a starry sky secret art was worth cultivating at any cost. Returning to the hall, I saw the rankings and noted that Tong'er led with 291 points, her Dao Bone aptitude serving as a terrifying benchmark. As I stood there, her voice cut through the air, teasingly asking if I'd been missing her, and after some lighthearted banter, she warned me to keep my distance from the corporate sharks in the consortiums before leaving with You Xin. She even bet that I'd score over 900 on the exam, and as I smiled, I realized that what was once a pipe dream was now entirely on the table. Zhang Jianwu was waiting in the car, his phone blowing up with anxious calls from my homeroom teacher. So I hopped into the passenger seat and offered a choice between the bad news that I'd turned down a 1,000,000 credit signing bonus and the good news that I'd secured a 500,000 credit sponsorship certification. Zhang Jianwu nearly stopped breathing, but his mood flipped and he clapped me on the shoulder, laughing at my attempt to play him, while I felt like I was flush with cash, despite the money only making me hungrier for growth. I immediately transferred 100,000 credits to Zhao Qingli to square my debt for the quota. Back home, I began testing 9 luminaries, star treading, and even with basic star energy, a single kick shattered the air with a thunderous boom, confirming 1% progress on my panel, though I knew the damage would be catastrophic if I channeled the full energy. Sleep was a rarity, but that night, the recurring dream returned where I was an infant handed to a woman named Sister Miao in that golden palace, only for the scene to shift to a cold woman named Li Qingyu, who sneered at my low-grade aptitude before having me thrown out into the shadows. I bolted upright with my heart hammering, realizing the mystery of my origins was deepening, but I had no time to dig, so I dived back into the martial Dao Heavenly Ladder to push my limits. While I obsessed over training, pushing my technique to 5% and my cultivation method to 30%, minor completion, a storm brewed far away at Penglai University, where a special admissions meeting turned into a circus. When my name hit the big screen, the room grew dismissive of my 839-point score. But Professor Zhu Hongli slammed his hand on the table to cite my 150-point surge as proof of monstrous potential. Suddenly, the legendary white-haired Professor Chen Yuntian chimed in. I want him as my disciple, sparking a heated feud between him and Zhu Hongli that left the rest of the board stunned. Ultimately, Elder Bai intervened with the condition that I was in if I hit the exam standard, with the battle for my mentorship to be settled once the scores were carved in stone. At 1 a.m. the night before the exam, I was still on the rooftop where my kicks left cracks in the stone, and I talked an anxious Li Zhichao down before hanging up with a bittersweet smile, knowing the sleepless nights of Ancheng were a burden I no longer carried, thanks to the martial Dao Heavenly Ladder. The exam itself passed in a blur of focused intensity, 12 years of sweat and 3 years of relentless grind all condensed into one day, and when I walked out of that final room on June 9th, the silence was deafening because my youth was officially over. The next morning, my family huddled around the living room with tension thick enough to cut with a knife, and my father's palms were slick with sweat as I pulled up the portal, punched in my registration number, and held my breath. My scores loaded: cultural score, 100, martial arts, 915, raw score, 895, ranking, 199th in Zishan province. My father let out a choked sound, nearly collapsing, for being in the top 200 out of millions was a miracle. The system chirped, unlocked title, playing the pig to eat the tiger. Reward, 150% critical damage when underestimated, and I couldn't help but smirk, thinking there was nothing like a little strategic humility to make a fight interesting. My first call was to Chen Zilu, and when I told her the score, a stunned silence followed before her mentor, Chu Zhang, started cheering in the background. Seeing her face on the screen, the sharp, refined beauty I hadn't seen in months. My pulse spiked, and even though Chu Zhang teased us, Chen Zilu kept her mask on until he finally left. "Congratulations," she said, her tone cold yet brittle. "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied. "It was your hard work," she retorted, a flicker of hurt in her eyes, making it obvious she felt I'd sidelined her. "I'll report my daily life to you from now on then," I offered, a little too impulsively. Her eyes widened and a rush of color flooded her cheeks as she turned away, flustered, saying, That's for couples, so you can only contact me for major matters or minor ones, I suppose once you're an A-plus student at Penglai." She was just finding an excuse to stay in my life, and the realization felt like a warm sun rising in my chest. That evening, the offers flooded in, and although every major university wanted a piece of me, my eyes were fixed on Penglai and its majestic, intimidating floating campus above the East Sea. While the grade contract was less than others, the resources were top tier, so with my parents' blessing, I signed. Late that night, a siren ripped through the air as the shadow hunting bureau, where my father worked, was being swallowed by a massive, colorful spatial rift, marking a level 2 shadow calamity. My heart shattered as I watched the defense line crumble, but just as the impotence of my helplessness burned, my phone buzzed with a call from Zhu Hongli of Penglai, who told me to not panic because my father was safe. A flash of divine sword light tore through the dark, vaporizing thousands of Shadow Clan members instantly, and a silver-armored figure grabbed my father and old Shah, depositing them safely on our balcony before vanishing back into the fray. I clung to my family, weeping with relief, but the message was clear that I had survived because of someone else's power, which filled me with a new, cold clarity that I didn't want to rely on the charity of legends ever again. I locked the door, took my stance, and sank into the familiar flow of the new martial advanced method, deciding that if the world was going to burn, I would be the fire that stood against it. Every movement felt instinctual, my body locked into a rhythm that defied fatigue, and as hours melted away, my 9 luminary star treading climbed to 12%, while my new martial advanced method neared major completion. Outside, Ancheng had become a graveyard, and while the arrival of shadow hunting teams from Qingyang and Mingcheng eventually stabilized the initial chaos, the cost was becoming clear. My phone buzzed with a gray notification, an obituary from Ancheng Third High School dated the 18th of June, 2326 listing 4 teachers, including Li Ang and Cao Feng, who died heroically. My mind went blank as I realized Cao Feng, the man who had defended me when others sneered, was gone. So I gripped my phone until my knuckles turned white and my nails carved half-moons into my palms. The sky outside remained a mocking, clear blue, yet the city felt hollowed out, and I finally understood that this wasn't a peaceful world, but a war zone where the casualties were my own people. When I finally reached Zhang Jianwu, his voice was a hollow rasp, confirming the nightmare that the Shadow Calamity had been a massive coordinated raid where over 100 starry sky tunnels had erupted, leaving Ancheng defenseless. A cold, singular obsession took root in my heart, for I knew that without power, the people I loved were nothing more than fodder. I channeled 9 luminaries star treading, each step heavy with the weight of my grief, for I wasn't just cultivating, I was forging a weapon. When the Unified Examination Bureau issued an emergency mission to purge the remaining Shadow Clan members, I didn't hesitate. The streets of my community were ruins, and the air reeked of rot and copper, but in the wreckage of a house, I found a shadow hunter from Qingyang whose body was torn apart, yet he still gripped his weapon in a final, defiant posture. I closed his eyes in silence, the fire in my chest turning into a cold, focused hatred. A 5-meter-tall Shadow Clan juvenile form lunged from the shadows with power already surpassing mine, but I didn't back down and instead channeled the compressed star energy from my hourglass-shaped Guanyuan acupoint into a singular, devastating strike. 9 luminaries star treading tore the monster in half, triggering a 100% critical hit that left the creature a ruined heap, and the system notified me. Killed demonic path member +1. For hours, I waded through the gore, but as I pushed deeper, a silver aircraft descended and 3 elites in ornate armor, Lin Qingwei and her 2 companions touched down. They struck up a conversation until they realized I was a local, at which point their eyes glazed over with that familiar, hollow contempt because a remote town genius wasn't worth their time, so I didn't waste a breath on them and turned my back to vanish into the ruins. The next area was a death trap, for 20 Shadow Clan members, including several massive juveniles, swarmed me in the most brutal fight of my life. Starlight shattered the gloom, blood stained the dust, and one by one the monsters fell, until the final 3 broke and fled toward an underground entrance, their animalistic fear overriding their hunger. I pursued them like a lightning strike, but as I crossed the threshold into the darkness, a deafening bang echoed behind me as a massive iron gate slammed shut, sealing the exit. The air shifted, and as I heard the unmistakable, smug tone of the Divine Eagle organization echoing from the dark, I realized this wasn't a lair but a cage. High above, in the observation hall, the monitors erupted into panic, because my signal had gone dead and the rescue teams were scrambling. Outside the gate, Tong'er and You Xin arrived, their faces pale with terror as they recognized my fading signature through the iron, signaling that I was trapped and the predators were waiting. Lin Qingwei's team hacked away at the iron gate, but it refused to yield, and inside the underground parking lot, I kept my guard up, sensing movement just before a crimson flash streaked past and sliced a deep, burning line into my cheek. Standing there was Xiaqing, my former classmate, now surrounded by a dozen black-clad thugs with lethal intent. She offered a gentle, hollow smile, explaining that she'd joined the Divine Eagle organization and performed a shell-snatching ritual to claim forbidden power. And with a smug sense of superiority, she tried to recruit me by dangling the absurd offer of sharing a bed as if it were a reward. I stayed silent, quietly circulating my star energy while mapping out the room, for the real threat wasn't Xiaqing, but the black-clad elder standing like a statue beside her. When I didn't immediately bow to her demands, Xiaqing's patience evaporated and she lunged at me. I played the role of the desperate underdog, retreating until I was inches from the elder, who watched with open disdain and was ready to finish me off. That was my opening. I layered every buff I had: Gale's Step, Beauty Seeks, the Tao, and playing the pig to eat the tiger, which doubled my speed and allowed me to blur into a phantom, reappearing in the elder's blind spot. I unleashed a kick fueled by thousands of wisps of compressed star energy, channeled through the 9 luminaries, star treading, and a cross-shaped flare of starlight erupted. The elder didn't even have time to scream before I shattered his waist, tearing him in two and splattering the floor with black-red viscera. The room went dead silent, and Xiaqing's smile froze into a mask of pure, unadulterated horror, as she realized the ant she had treated with such disdain was actually a viper. I didn't stop, and still riding the momentum of Gale's Step, I turned into silver lightning and carved through the remaining black-clad thugs, then kicked Xiaqing, sending her flying as her abdomen ruptured with foul, viscous liquid. Recognizing she was outmatched, she shrieked for her men to retreat, fleeing into the darkness, but I didn't pursue because I'd burned a third of my star energy in that single burst and the depths were a tactical nightmare. Seconds later, the Iron Gate collapsed, and Tong'er and You Xin rushed in first, followed by Lin Qingwei's team and a squadron of police. The room was a slaughterhouse, and Lin Qingwei, who had dismissed me as a remote town nobody just hours ago, now looked at me with genuine awe. Even Tong'er dropped her guard, though she hid her concern by petulantly stomping on my foot, claiming she'd cover me. After the dust settled, the captain informed me that Xiaqing was likely a Shadow Clan youth form that had snatched a human shell, and my heart sank as I realized the classmate who used to bring me water was gone, replaced by a monster. Over the next 5 days, I became a reaper, hunting every trace of the Shadow Clan, from the city ruins to the deep mines until my bounty reached 1,648,800 Federation credits. That night, Tang Huochan called, with the shocking news that the Bureau was promoting me to a Level 3 Reserve New Professional, granting me benefits like a 500,000 credit, monthly subsidy, and annual Starry Sky baptisms. On top of that, the system hit me with a milestone reward, acting on behalf of Heaven, which bumped my luck and permanently boosted my comprehension by 10%, making me officially ready for the big leagues. 3 days later, after paying my respects at Teacher Cao Feng's memorial, Jiang Jianwu pulled me aside and dropped a bombshell. Chen Zilu belonged to a transcendent family, a lineage so powerful they sat at the table with the Federation itself. So he warned me to keep our relationship strictly professional when I reached Penglai University. I spent the next month in absolute isolation, driven by the memory of the dead, and by July 31st, 9 luminaries star treading finally reached the entry level. I stood on the roof, firing a silver ring of starlight into the clouds, knowing I was no longer the desperate boy from Ancheng. The next morning, Zhao Qingli picked me up in his flying machine, and as we cruised toward Donghai province, he warned me that the Road to Heaven trial had a 30% pass rate. Meanwhile, back at the university, 2 legends, Professor Chen Yuntian and Professor Zhu Hongli, were already engaged in a heated, red-faced argument, both demanding the right to mentor me the moment I stepped onto their campus. I stared at the passing clouds, my blood humming with anticipation as I realized Penglai University awaited, and the supposed geniuses of the eastern region would soon learn exactly who I was. I closed my eyes to cultivate, only to be jerked awake by a torrent of system alerts, stating I had detected speed surpassing the low martial world limits for over 1 hour, triggering the hidden milestone achievement for matching martial god speed, and the title Weakest Martial God. I froze at the prospect of a martial god threshold that was supposed to be 7th soul territory when I was barely 1st soul, but I quickly sidelined the weakest label because a god is a god. The rewards were even better. A flat 50% boost to base speed, the martial god's instant movement daily teleportation skill, and rate control, which allowed me to overclock my speed up to 500% at the cost of other stats. Teleportation alone was a get-out-of-jail-free card for any death trap. In the cabin next to mine, Zhao Qingli was getting an earful from his sister, Zhao Jingxue, who was uncharacteristically insistent that he help her recruit me for Professor Chen Yuntian, specifically dropping the bombshell that I was already a Level 3 Reserve New Professional. Zhao Qingli stared at the bulkhead, shell-shocked that the poor kid he'd been trying to mentor had effectively lapped him. We touched down in Tianhai City, a futuristic metropolis of 500 million people, with gravity-defying architecture and floating towers that served as a playground for the elite. Zhao Qingli and I parted ways at the gates of Penglai University. He was headed to a double dorm in the yellow character area as a grade D student, while I secured a villa in the earth character zone. Seeing the luxurious manners of the grade A+ students in the heaven character area, Zhao Qingli's jaw tightened, for he had some grinding to do. I hadn't even unpacked before. I was swarmed by familiar faces from Xishan province, led by Lin Yushu and Xu Haoran, and when Xu let it slip that I'd been promoted to a level 3 reserve new professional, the group erupted because we had suddenly become contenders for the top 20 instead of the bottom tier 38th place. I kept my mouth shut and my eyes on the prize, specifically the 5 million credit bonus for the enrollment trial. The next morning, thousands of freshmen stood beneath the Penglai Heavenly Tower, where geniuses with Daobone aptitudes were common and heavyweights like Lu Wangxiao and Xin Changxi arrived with auras that made the air feel thin, though even Yun Qinger looked small among the titans. At 8 a.m., the tower gates groaned open, and we surged into a vast, artificial starry dimension, where we donned flight armor that synced perfectly with our star energy. The road to heaven is 50 kilometers, the examiner's voice boomed, adding, the faster you run, the higher your score. You have 3 minutes to adapt, begin. Thousands of us turned into streaks of light rocketing toward the silver river of the course, while high above in the observation deck, the university's elite elder Bai, Chen Yuntian, and Zhu Hongli leaned into the monitors to see which of us would break first. All eyes were on me, a level 3 reserve new professional with a primitive aptitude and a dirt-poor background, but while they expected me to finish in the bottom tier, I hit the gale step and toggled rate control to redline my internal engine, blowing past the middle of the pack in seconds. Zhao Qingli yelled for me to keep going, so I did, leaving Song Wanbai in the dust and brushing past Xu Haoran like he was standing still. For while my bank account might be on life support, my speed was pure main character energy. Just as I aimed for the top 5, the road to heaven betrayed us as gravity spiked tenfold and house-sized boulders rained down, forcing me to dial back to 100% speed, just to dodge while my ranking plummeted past 200. I could practically hear the professors in the monitoring room writing me off, so I told myself that I wasn't lazy but just on energy-saving mode, waiting for the storm to break. 3 minutes later, gravity normalized, but a screeching demonic sonic wave tore through the air and caused everyone to lose their minds, stumbling and running in circles until I hit my cheat year setting to 0 and enjoyed the blissful, silent void. While the elite students were busy having existential crises, I hit 400% speed and sprinted into the top 10, fueled by Xu Haoran's roar, to win glory for Zishan. By the 40-kilometer mark, a massive bronze warship tore through the sky and unleashed a swarm of white-robed warriors in a brutal heart-tempering ambush. They were ranged mages, but I dropped my speed to 100% to regain my combat stats and charged straight into the meat grinder, and although they shredded me with starlight, every bone-deep wound triggered my finding joy and sorrow buff to make me stronger. I didn't dodge, but instead delivered a thunderous 8-tribe thundersound fist to everything in reach, and when the last physical brawler stood against me, I kicked him into orbit using the 9 luminaries star treading, leaving a crater behind. I dragged my mangled, bloody body toward the final stretch and caught Yun Qinger silently using her aptitude to soften the gravity for me, prompting me to grin as I engaged Gale Step again to hit 800% speed. I was a phantom, blurring past Liu Wangxiao and screaming toward Shen Changxi, who cracked his own skin to hit God's speed in a desperate bid to keep his lead. But I teleported the final 100 meters using my martial god's instant movement to cross the line half a head faster. First place, You Xin. The monitoring hall exploded as the professors who thought I was a fluke began scrambling, and as a golden Penglai gift galaxy descended to upgrade my constitution. The debate over my contract turned into a shouting match, until Chen Yuntian claimed I was his, and Zhu Hongli slammed the table to brawl for the right to train me. Everything was falling into place, for even if my life felt like a loading screen, I was definitely hitting the main level now. The silver-white hall of the Penglai Sky Tower pulsed with electricity while thousands of us stood frozen, eyes locked on the holographic ranking screen as the data refreshed and a roar erupted through the chamber. First, You Xin, second, Shen Changxi, third, Lu Wangxiao, fourth, Yun Qinger. I topped the freshman individual list and single-handedly vaulted Zishan province from a dismal 35th place to 19th in the Federation, leaving the hall in a mess of shock while even Zhao Qingli gave me a look of genuine, exhausted respect. Vice Principal Bai Qiudao appeared above us to announce that the top 100 could choose their mentors, and as the heavy hitters of the faculty filled the room, Chen Yuntian radiated pure dominance while Zhu Hongli offered a more grounded approach. When Elder Bai called my name, the silence was absolute, and I walked straight past Chen Yuntian's outstretched hand to stop before Zhu Hongli and announce, "Teacher Zhu, I choose you." The room went cold and Chen Yuntian was furious, not knowing that Zhu Hongli had personally saved my father during the Ancheng disaster, and because I don't forget favors, I chose loyalty over leverage. After the crowd dispersed, Zhu Hongli pulled me aside to say I was getting grade A superior treatment, but added the caveat that I wouldn't get the official contract until I placed in the top 10 of the freshman tournament in 3 months, to prove the faculty wrong about my talent. He spoke of the Battle of the Stars, the ultimate proving ground for every prodigy on Blue Star, and told me that if I wanted to silence the skeptics, I needed to dominate the tournament. My new home was Heaven's Own No. 41, a floating manor that made my previous life look like a glorified storage closet, and along with the keys came 900,000 credits and 500,000 trial points, which finally put me in the black with 7 million credits in the bank. The next day, Zhu Hongli took us to the Starry Sky Teaching Building and nudged me toward the Great Sun Spearmanship, a masterpiece created by the legendary Bai Long in his youth that was magnificent, aggressive, and perfectly suited for my style, so I claimed it immediately. Then came the training regimen of 14 hours of drills, 3 hours of private instruction, and 2 hours of rank pushing, leaving me with only 5 hours of sleep, a schedule that would have broken most, but for me, it was just a Tuesday. I ordered the Black Dragon Dawn, a spear forged from sun goldstone and wrapped in 9 profound black dragons, and after watching the instructional video once, I went from a novice to 30% mastery in a single afternoon. That night, I dove into the virtual Starry Sky and encountered Zhao Qingli, who gripped her long saber with a polished mirror shine as we ignited the match. The beauty asks the way buff flared to boost my attack speed by 35% as my spear transformed into a storm of shadows, and while Zhao's saber danced to keep up, she was already on the defensive. Zhao Qingli's long legs swept toward me in a blur, but I held my ground like a boulder, and as I parried, my Great Sun Spearmanship climbed to 31% while she doubled her speed. I stopped holding back and poured my star energy into the Black Dragon Dawn to unleash the first form, Sunrise in the East, a brilliant halo that erupted from the spear tip to pierce her chest. As her avatar dissolved, she offered a nod of genuine relief rather than defeat, and though I stared at the Tier 0-1 win on my panel, I frowned at my technique because the halo was weak and I needed to unlock more active effects to dominate. I dove back into the matchmaking queue, piling up wins until I hit a 9-win streak, and for the 10th, I fought a one-soul late-stage opponent who tested my mid-stage foundation until I triggered my striking a stone with an egg buff to snatch a victory and raise my mastery to 40%. After reviewing my mistakes, I blew my remaining 250,000 credits on 7 gray market gadgets, including a high magnification microscope, a drone hive, and a high-end sniper rifle, as an investment in my future. I hauled the gear to the roof, aimed the sniper rifle at a boulder 20 miles away, and squeezed the trigger, watching as it vanished in a cloud of dust. System: Achievement unlocked. Killing from afar, leaving no trace in 1,000 miles. Title: Void Lock On. Reward: Ranged accuracy plus 100%, damage scales with distance, 0.1% chance for void imprisonment. Next, I deployed the drone hive, and the system chirped. Achievement unlocked. Body unmoving, yet comprehending all surroundings. Title: Sitting and Observing the Cosmos. Reward: Penetrative telekinesis. An invisible ripple expanded from me, letting me see through walls as I effectively used a 4-soul ability while still in the 1-soul realm. And finally, I turned the microscope on my own skin. System: Achievement unlocked. Omniscient Eye. Reward: Sensory Acuity Boost, reveals enemy weaknesses for 3 minutes. Cooldown: 1 hour. The world shifted, and because I could see the meridian flow within my own body and the energy currents of everything around me, it felt heaven-defying. The next morning, I stood in the training room at the Starry Sky Teaching Building where Zhu Hongli called me to the center to demonstrate the Great Sun Spearmanship, so I gripped the 9-foot spear, felt the cold metal grounding me, and stepped forward. I executed the sunrise in the east with a flair that felt truly majestic, but Zhu Hongli didn't even blink, pointing out that my obsession with the flashiest moves had made me neglect the foundational footwork. For 30 grueling minutes, he dissected my flaws until everything clicked, and when he finally demonstrated the Great Sun Spearmanship himself, I triggered my omniscient eye to record the precise energy flow through his meridians. After that single session, my mastery jumped from 40% to 50%, and by the time he finished my 3-hour instruction, my spearmanship sat at 69%, while my 9 luminaries star-treading steps had hit the beginner level. I'm not lazy, I'm just on energy-saving mode, but under Zhu's guidance, my efficiency was off the charts. The next month was a blur of high-intensity training, including 8 hours of solo drills, 3 hours with Zhu, 2 hours of rank pushing, and 5 hours on the Martial Dao Heavenly Ladder. It cost over 1 million credits, but my wallet being on a diet was a small price to pay for the gains. The ultimate test came with the primordial Starry Sky Baptism, where everyone expected me to tap out within half a day, but I stayed submerged for 10 until I climbed out feeling like a completely different person with strength touching the threshold of the 1-soul late stage. Even Star Envoy Wang looked like he wanted a refund on the energy he'd spent on me. Word of my 10-day marathon spread like wildfire, with Shen Changxi reportedly livid and his teacher Chen Yuntian demanding he crush me in the upcoming freshman tournament, while Lu Wangxiao was being told by his own mentor that my talent gap was too wide to bridge. They didn't realize that while they were busy underestimating me, I was busy breaking my own limits. 2 months later, my progress was terrifying, for my Star Martial Advancement method hit 98% mastery, and my spearmanship reached minor mastery, unlocking my second ultimate, Blazing Sun Across the Sky. Then, the notification dropped. The freshman tournament was officially starting on October 31st with a top prize of 1 million points, equivalent to 10 million Federation credits. My bank account and my dreams are both on life support, but this tournament was the defibrillator I needed, and if Shen Changxi and Lu Wangxiao wanted that throne, they were going to have to go through me. I spent the final days hitting the peak of the 1-soul stage, equipped my sleek, grayish-black Starry Sky battlesuit, and grabbed the Black Dragon Dawn, which felt like an extension of my soul. When I arrived at the training room to meet my squad, Zhu Hongli didn't mince words, setting ambitious goals for everyone before locking eyes with me and stating, "You Xin, secure top 10 at minimum, and strive to take first place." The room went silent and even Yun Qinger looked bewildered, for while everyone else was aiming for the top 50, I was being tasked with the championship. I didn't say a word, just tightened my grip on my spear and thought, bold of you to assume I don't know what I'm doing, while a grim smile formed on my lips because I was ready. The arena hummed with latent energy as 8 a.m. struck and thousands of us materialized within the virtual starry sky for the Penglai Freshman Tournament. My goal? Done by 9 a.m., because my toxic trait is thinking I can finish a 10-hour task in 20 minutes. The matchmaking gods had a sense of humor, for my first opponent was Lin Yushu, who gave me a bitter smile and clutched his silver longsword while muttering that after 3 months of grinding, maybe he could actually touch me this time. I just chose my black dragon spear, and 3 seconds later, he was flying out of the arena. One thrust, one match. As he dissipated, he gripped my arm and said, "You have to reach the top 10, and City is counting on you," to which I nodded, marking a silent promise between us. In the observation deck, the faculty watched the feeds while Elder Bai turned to Zhu Hongli, questioning his secret weapon. Zhu didn't say a word, just watched the monitors, and when my match ended in record time, the room went dead silent because the teachers were speechless at the fact that my growth curve was mathematically impossible. Only the preliminaries, Zhu finally murmured, a smirk tugging at his lips. I carved through the ranks like a hot knife through butter, and because nothing lasted more than 10 seconds, I cleared the top 500, 250, 150 before the format shifted to 5-person free-for-alls. I linked up with my fellow disciple, Deng Yunfei, but the other 3 moved to corner us. A cocky kid ranked 35th lunged at me, sneering that my has-honed spot in the entrance trials was a fluke, but I didn't say a word, just waited for the inevitable. System prompt, playing the pig to eat the tiger. When underestimated, critical damage increases by 150%. My spear didn't just pierce him, it cratered through him, and one hit resulted in 1 elimination, sending the crowd into a frenzy. I turned into a blur, clearing the field with Deng before we stood alone, and although he threw everything he had at me, I was faster and bloomed the sunrise in the east against his chest, sending him soaring out of the arena. System. Top 10 secured. Zhu Hongli laughed until his eyes watered, while Chen Yuntian looked like he'd lost his retirement fund and muttered, "He'll reach the top 3, while pointing at Yun Qinger, who was currently turning a warhammer into a blender and smashing her opponent into oblivion. Respectfully, absolutely not. The top 10 bracket flashed on the screens as Shen Changxi ended his opponent without taking a step, and Lu Wangxiao cut his rival down in 3 precise saber strikes, followed by the announcement, You Xin vs. Chehua. The crowd roared as I flashed into the center of the arena, spear light and cold in my grip, knowing I wasn't here to play, but to finish this. My spear tip bit into the arena floor as I locked eyes with my opponent, and with a focused breath, I unleashed a spear light so intense it tore through the darkness of the arena, prompting the announcement, You Xin wins. The top 10 had folded and now only 5 remained. Shen Changxi, Lu Wangxiao, Yun Qinger, myself, and a red-haired youth. The crowd was fixated on the veteran prodigies, treating me like a fluke. But in the first, top 5 match, Yun Qinger shocked everyone by obliterating her opponent with 88 palm strikes in a single second, and watching that display of violence, I knew I couldn't afford to hold anything back against Lu Wangxiao. The screen flashed, You Xin versus Lu Wangxiao. The arena went deathly quiet as Lu stepped forward, his blood-red saber humming, and said, "You're just a stepping stone, Xin." As the match began, he surged forward like a thunderclap with his pulse domain locking the arena in a suffocating suppression, but I triggered Gale Step and Speed Control to stack my speed by 300%. I blurred behind him, the purple light of my sunrise in the east erupting from my spear tip, and with one violent thrust, I shattered his defense and pinned him to the ground. You Xin wins. The roar of the crowd was deafening, and Elder Bai looked stunned, because mastering that spear art to the second stage in 3 months was supposed to be impossible. My brain has 37 tabs open, and I can't find where the music is coming from, I thought, suppressing a smirk, because I was just getting started. Then, the bracket for the championship matches appeared. You Xin versus Yun Qinger. I expected a war, but as we stepped onto the stage, she whispered, "Attack with all your strength, I won't fight back," and after a brief exchange, she leaned into my spear and surrendered voluntarily. She'd done it to force Shen Changxi to reveal his trump card, Moonfall, a move so lethal. Even 2 soul experts feared it, yet Shen had mastered it as a peak 1 soul. My teachers shook their heads because they gave me 0 chance. The finals of the 2326th freshman tournament began with Shen Changxi standing opposite me, aloof and deadly with his twin silver swords, asking, "Unless you have a 3rd ultimate move, you're finished." "Only one way to find out," I replied. We collided in a storm of steel, and as the beauty-seeking the Dao buff triggered to boost my speed and damage, I forced Shen back until he panicked and shifted into the 2nd gear of his Gale domain. I activated Keen Observation, turning his frantic sword light into slow-motion frames, and countered with Blazing Sun across the sky, meeting his secret art head-on in an impact that shook the stadium. Then came the Moonfall, a a crimson moon wheel descending that promised to erase me while everyone held their breath. System, Gale Step, Martial God Instant Step, and Martial Dao Grandmaster stacked to max. I became a beam of light, bypassed the carnage, and appeared behind him, where I kicked with my foot glowing with the concentrated starlight of 9 luminaries star treading. The explosion blinded everyone, and when the dust settled, we were both fading and heavily wounded, but on the giant screen, 4 golden words pulsed: You Xin wins. The stadium erupted and I had done the impossible, leaving Chen Yuntian to stare, baffled by how someone with a primitive aptitude had mastered Earth-tier arts in months. I had won the championship, and with it, the recognition of the entire university, marking the beginning of the era of the Dark Horse. They upgraded my contract to grade A+, providing 10 million in annual resources, unlimited hotel access, advanced study quotas at Bailong University, and S-rank mission eligibility. The rewards were overwhelming, but I didn't have time to bask in the hype. My system panel was screaming, for my Great Sun Spear art had leveled up again, and my Star Martial Advancement method was on the cusp of perfection. Then, a notification shattered my focus. Ding. Achievement unlocked, world-renowned. Reward, talent reconstruction. My heart hammered against my ribs, for talent was supposed to be set in stone, a biological ceiling even Dao Bone geniuses couldn't break, yet the system was shredding those limits. As the recognition of 50,000 people poured into me as world power, my original talent fundamentally shifted, evolving into a newborn talent, and because I was currently at 3/10 on the progress bar, I felt main character energy, knowing that if I could reach a Dao Bone level of talent, the 25 University's Genius Cup would just be the beginning. Before I could process the change, my teacher, Chen Zilu, called, and the beautiful, graceful woman who had been quietly guiding me all along, revealed she was a 4-soul realm expert who promised me an exclusive prize once I reached the 2-soul realm, her expectations hanging over me like a high-stakes challenge. I hung up and started a training cycle, and because the effect of the reconstruction was terrifying, with my energy conversion efficiency jumping 20%, I wasn't just training, I was evolving. That night, Zhu Hongli dropped 2 bombs. First, that major corporations were flooding my DMs with endorsement deals offering 5 million credit deposits to bet on my future, and second, that in 2 weeks, I'd be heading into an S-rank mission called Fortress Judgment, so he tightened my training schedule to set a rigid goal of breaking through to the Starry Sky's 2nd stage in 6 months. By morning, my wristband was exploding with notifications, so I signed an exclusive endorsement deal with the Star Vocation Center that offered a 10 million credit deposit scaling up to 100 million if I won the championship, ensuring my wallet was no longer on a diet. I immediately burned through my credits for Mystic Tier mid-grade resources, and after one bite of an enlightenment ginseng that put me in a profound state of focus, my 9 luminaries star treading progressed 6% in a single day, a pace that used to be a pipe dream while I spent 5 days in the Starry Sky cleansing pool. My new newborn talent, absorbing energy with violent efficiency. I emerged, jumped into the virtual cabin, and annihilated the high-tier opponents who used to give me trouble, officially reaching the Starry Sky first stage with combat power that had surged 70% since the finals. The next half-month was pure, unadulterated grinding as my Great Sun Spear art hit 65% minor mastery, and I even unlocked the prototype of my 3rd ultimate, Sunfall, which turned my training room into a 10-meter kill zone of spear light, while my footwork wasn't far behind. On November 15th, the squad, Shen Changxi, Yun Qinger, Lu Wangxiao, and I gathered for Fortress Judgment as Zhu Hongli projected the target, which was the Divine Eagle Syndicate's underground fortress. And while the mission objective was total extermination, with a reward for an A-grade rating of 2 million points, and 50 grams of Star Essence liquid worth 50 million credits, I couldn't help but think I needed a rich uncle I didn't know about, though killing Syndicate members would have to suffice. Just as the mission details settled, the system pinged again with a new achievement triggered. Sect Entrance Exam, which I had to complete to claim admission rewards, so I steeled myself. Knowing that whether it was the Syndicate or the system, I was ready to claim what was mine. I arrived at the Ivory Mountain Range with Shen Changxi, Lu Wangxiao, and Yun Qinger, and we quickly compared notes, finding that Shen had mastered his first Qiyue ultimate. Lu's surging wave was at perfection, and Yun's explosive burst speed was truly terrifying. When I casually mentioned I'd already hit the prototype stage for Sunfall, the group fell dead silent, and although I felt like I was multitasking and failing several things at once, I had somehow managed to finish my breakthrough. We didn't waste time, so I engaged my Starry Sky Armor's laser, carving a path into the Divine Eagle Syndicate's underground lair until we broke into the first level in seconds, triggering a deafening alarm. I roared, "Execute the plan. Kill." As my Black Dragon Spear became a black blur, and while enemies below the One-Soul realm were essentially target practice, my blood ran cold when I noticed a Shadow secret art boosting their power 2 minor realms higher, meaning the peak One-Soul experts on the 3rd level would be near 2-soul power, forcing us to change tactics. We hit the 2nd level corridor, and when my telekinetic all-encompassing observation flared, I roared, "Get down," and we flattened ourselves just as a torrent of high-powered lasers swept overhead, enough to cripple a 2-soul expert. We emerged into a hall filled with over 60 peak One-Soul enemies, which was exactly what I wanted, so I charged ahead, drawing fire until a dozen late-stage experts tried to ambush me, prompting me to sweep my spear back and trigger Sunfall Returning Light. The enemies didn't stand a chance, and as every clash sharpened my foundation with system pings scrolling through my mind, my proficiency soared. Then, the syndicate leader stepped up, his shadow assimilation pushing him to the edge of the two-soul realm as he swung a monstrous wave of saber light, and although I felt one inconvenience away from becoming a forest witch, my blood was actually singing. I funneled my star energy into the blazing sun across the sky. The resulting shockwave shredded everything nearby, and after we traded blows for a minute, I spotted a weakness, sent his saber flying with one strike, and finished him with my spear. In the wake of the kill, my great sun spear art hit the third stage, and as a pale red sun bloomed from my spear tip, my teammates were left speechless. On the third level, a thick, toxic fog reduced visibility to 3 meters, and when we stumbled into a laboratory of horrors with vats of black-red liquid filled with human limbs, I saw the name on a test subject list, Shaching. My heart stalled, but dozens of lasers tore through the fog and Lu took a direct hit to his armor, so I realized I needed a new angle. Charged 70 meters in a heartbeat, activated my Void Lock-on title, and thrust my spear. The pale red halo unerringly, finding a target 50 meters away through the fog. Lu yelled in bewilderment, "Is he using an aimbot?" But I didn't answer, just kept firing until the laser net collapsed. Deep in the fog, a massive aura surged because the real boss, Hai Dong, the Syndicate's enforcer, watched his men fall on his monitors with a face twisted in rage and commanded his remaining shadow warriors to surround us, so I leveled my spear and roared the new attack order. Yun Qinger and I stood back to back, while Shen Changxi and Liu Wangshao locked down the other flank as a gale of shadows tore through the fog, bringing 7 elite assassins, 4 of which were peak one-soul realm, while 3 had pushed their secret arts to the threshold of the two-soul realm. I didn't blink, but instead, ignited the beauty seeking the Dao buff, boosting my attack speed by 35% and packing my strikes with a 50% damage bonus, then spun the 9-foot black dragon spear and unleashed the 31st move, Piercing Ray, a miniature pale red sun that fired scorching beams and riddled my attackers with holes before I lunged to shatter the heart of a peak one-soul expert. Less than 30 seconds in, the first body hit the floor, and though I felt like I was multitasking and failing several things at once, I realized I was hunting as my spear moved like a dragon, claiming head after head until, in minutes, 9 elites were down and the 4 of us had cleared over 50 enemies. Suddenly, the remaining men in black erupted, their skin turning pitch black as their assimilation peaked and pushed them into the two-soul threshold, and they flooded the hall with invisible talent domains that locked us in place. I struggled against the paralysis, thinking my patience had left the group chat, until a wave of energy pulsed from Yun Qinger, shattering the domains. She slumped, her power drained, so I shielded her, stepped forward, stoked my star energy to the breaking point, and unleashed the third ultimate, Sunfall, a 4-meter sun that bloomed and detonated, turning the lead assassin into a sieve and erasing a dozen others. But the real monsters, Hai Dong and Scarface, had just entered the chat, and as their two-soul auras warped the air, my spine bent under the pressure, so Shen and Liu intercepted Scarface, leaving me to face Hai Dong. Striking a stone with an egg triggered, stacking damage buffs as I clashed with the veteran, and Hai Dong was stunned that a mere one soul could hold his own, until Yun Xinger's voice chimed in to say her domain doubled my damage output, infuriating Hai Dong enough to swallow us into a material domain of pure darkness. My 5 senses vanished, and although he moved for the kill, he didn't know I'd already unlocked all-encompassing observation, a martial will reserve for the 4-soul realm, so I saw him clearly in the void, stacked Gale Step and Martial God Instant Step, channeled tens of thousands of strands of star energy into my right foot, and hit him with a Lightspeed 7 combo kick that pierced his heart, followed by a spear strike through his skull. The darkness collapsed and Hai Dong hit the floor, so I didn't stop but flashed towards Scarface and blew his thigh apart with a kick until, moments later, the fortress was ours. I leaned on my spear, gasping, knowing the battle had been a catalyst where 9 luminaries star treading hit 47%. Minor mastery, my great sun, spear art surged to 80%, and my months of grinding finally paid off in a single, brutal night. Back at Pengla University, Zhu Hongli looked me over, realized I'd awakened a true martial Dao will, and promised me advanced studies at Bailong University, noting that the Syndicate's talent domain was just a cheap, perverse imitation of the Shadow Tribe. Back in my manor, I downed the 50 million credit star essence liquid, my meridians humming with transformation as the system went into overdrive. Achievement unlocked, peak legacy, and as my cultivation speed jumped 30%, I gained the Dao Enlightenment trait, making even the most complex arts feel like child's play. Then came Army Breaker, a title earned by slaughtering dozens of masters and slaying a 2-soul titan, and since it was even better than my previous buffs with a permanent 30% damage increase when besieged, I realized the era of the Dark Horse wasn't just beginning, it had officially arrived. As I stared at the panel, it flickered to show my physique pushing toward mid-C grade, and although it didn't quite cross the threshold, it unlocked a new ability called Battle Soul. It scaled with 3 conditions, specifically 10% more damage while injured, 20% boosts to attack and defense in martial armor, and a 30% attribute spike in Berserk state, making it a talent ability exclusive to Daobone geniuses that I. an original talent user, had triggered through a 1 in a million martial bone awakening. Delulu is the Solulu, but apparently, it pays off, especially since the blessing of level 2 luck, prosperity was absolutely broken. I dove into the training room, the black dragon spear singing in my hands as I triggered Tao Intent Resonance, and for 6 hours, I was in a state of absolute focus, gaining as much insight as a week of normal training and pushing the Great Sun Spear technique to 99% minor mastery, only to hit a wall where it wouldn't budge for 12 days, leaving my motivation buffering. This bottleneck was meant for 2-soul experts, so for a 1-soul cultivator, it was like trying to fly to the moon. With no other options, I used the Starry Sky Tier 1 invitation function to challenge Chen Zilu. 5 seconds later, the peerless genius in her signature moon white dress appeared, and I greeted her with a smirk before she froze, raised an eyebrow, and summoned a silver spear to see if her new junior brother had the skills to back up the cheek. I launched an aggressive assault, the Great Sun Spear technique raging like a prairie fire, while she moved like a glacier, blocking every strike with effortless grace. But instead of frustration, I felt a surge of excitement, for under her relentless pressure, I finally glimpsed the missing piece of my technique. The softness merged with the extreme ferocity, and with a sudden snap of force, I broke through to great mastery while 2 observers from the Federation headquarters watched from the shadows, immediately tagging me as a priority target. Chen Zilu retracted her spear, a smile touching her eyes as she accepted the junior brother title and jokingly asked for a meal as payment, leaving me with a sense of genuine warmth because I knew I would have been stuck for months without her guidance. For the next 2 months, my life was a cycle of grind, including 6 a.m. wake-ups, 14 hours of technical honing, 2 hours of virtual combat, and 5 hours of willpower tempering on the martial arts ladder. Until my spear technique solidified, my other skills broke through in turn, and I finally hit the ultimate ceiling of the 2-soul realm. When I stepped into the primal Starry Sky cleansing pool, Star Envoy Wang took one look and knew I was ready for the transformation. I sat in the roiling purple energy, absorbing power at a terrifying rate, and while Daobone geniuses could only handle 3 days of this agonizing genetic restructuring, I pushed through round after round until the progress bar finally hit 100%, causing millions of strands of star energy to riot within me and carve a brand new star vein along my governing vessel. The second life shackle shattered, a 2-soul star vein had opened, and as a vast, primal aura swept through the cleansing room, every student in the facility turned toward me in stunned silence. When I stepped out of the cleansing pool, the room fell dead silent because I had rushed from mid-stage 1-soul to the 2-soul realm in half a year, a pace that shattered every standard of cultivation. Even Shen Changxi, a true Daobone prodigy, looked at me with open shock, and Yun Qinger stared with wide, fluctuating eyes. I didn't care about the attention, but I noted my star energy circulation had tripled in efficiency, and where I used to waste 90% of my energy, I was now converting half into raw combat power. Suddenly, the system chimed. Strength reached upper limit, title unlocked, Martial Arts Titan, reward, Daobone transformation. My physique surged from a grade C lower to a grade B upper profound body, and feeling like a completely different person, I walked out, headed straight to the martial arts ladder, climbed the steps that once nearly crushed me as if I were walking on flat ground, reached the top platform, and triggered the ultimate assessment. I plunged into darkness, living a century-long dream of Spear Dao as the founder of the Great Sun Dojo, a lonely old man chasing the limit of the spear, until finally, as I lay dying by a snowy lake, I saw the phantom of a woman in a white dress practicing her spear, which provided the breakthrough I needed to fuse the ferocity of the Great Sun with her piercing cold intent and reach the realm of a Spear Dao Titan. I awoke on the ladder to a golden steel, noting the title Spear Dao Titan, and realized I gained 100% comprehension speed for spear techniques and a massive damage boost against anyone lacking a Spear Dao, which even evolved my Earth-rank Great Sun spear technique and made 1 day of my training worth a month of anyone else's. I followed Zhu Hongli to White Dragon University, a place where the halls were shaped like a massive floating dragon, and even the freshmen were grade B geniuses. Then went straight for Chu Zhang, Chen Zilu's mentor, and raised my Black Dragon spear in the training room to trigger a double state of enlightenment, impressing even the veteran Chu Zhang. I thought about needing a nap after my nap, but Chu Zhang immediately hit me with 120 flaws in my technique, and gave me 3 minutes to digest the information before throwing me into a real combat duel against Tang Wuji, a mid-stage, 2-soul expert. Everyone expected me to be crushed, but my century of Spear Dao accumulation erupted, and with the Spear Dao Titan and striking a stone with an egg buff stacking, I doubled my damage and fought Tang Wuji to a standstill until I was eventually knocked out, grinning because my Great Sun spear technique had jumped 20% in progress. Chu Zhang began my hell training, featuring 10 hours of non-stop, high-pressure sparring with 10-minute windows to eat or sleep, and though I mused that my mental health and sleep schedule were in a toxic relationship, I accepted the 3-hour sleep limit without blinking. By midnight, my spear technique was at 22% great mastery, and I realized I was growing faster in a day than I had in a month of solitary grinding. At 3 a.m., I carried a gift of Star C, original liquid to White Dragon Star Courtyard No. 10. The starry sky gate opened, and Chen Zilu appeared, looking even more ethereal under the starlight as a mid-stage 4-soul expert and my mentor in every sense. I handed her the starry sky-glazed necklace, and though she scolded me for the expense, her eyes softened as she clasped it around her neck. In return, she pressed a divine Tao enlightenment jade into my hands, a priceless treasure from a level 1 starry sky civilization, and said with a faint smile and twinkling eyes, "Courtesy demands reciprocity. Do you dare to catch up to me?" I gripped the divine jade, my voice steady, and replied, "I'll catch up to you. I've always loved the hardest peaks." The next 6 days were a blur of hellish training where I lived in a cycle of spear drills, movement techniques, and fist fighting. And by the time I checked my panel, the progress was absurd. 9 luminaries, star treading, and heavenly tribulation fists were at 99% minor mastery, and my great sun spear technique had hit 29% great mastery, leaving me inches away from the 4th ultimate move, Burning Sea. Even Chu Zhang couldn't help but gush, admitting he should have just recruited me to White Dragon University months ago. February 13th arrived and the White Dragon Court opened with a 100-meter tall gate of light piercing the clouds to hide inheritances from the deepest reaches of the stars, leaving the plaza electric with ambition, though no one expected a Penglai student to snag a heaven-ranked prize. Tang Wuji even joked for me to go easy, but I didn't say a word, turned into a blur of light, and dove into the gate. I materialized in Shadow Clan, Star Nest Simulation number 999, with 30 minutes to clear 3 locations, exploded forward, and tore through a mob of 90 juveniles with my Black Dragon Spear singing. When 10 early-stage 2-soul Shadow Clan youths pounced, I didn't flinch, unleashing 2 moves, Great Sun piercing the clouds, followed by Blazing Sun to eliminate them. Back in the Star Pavilion, the teachers who had labeled me mediocre grew quiet, and 10 minutes later, I hit the 3rd location where a mid-stage 2-soul Shadow Clan youth lunged at me. I triggered Battle Soul Berserk to increase all attributes by 30% and stacked my striking a stone with an egg and thick accumulation, thin eruption buffs, then used Blazing Sun across the sky to tear through the air and pierce his heart in under 30 seconds, prompting the purple-robed elder watching the feed to grab his phone and call Chu Zhang because I was aiming higher than heaven rank. The 2nd stage, the Swamp Wasteland, was a death trap that snuffed out all 5 senses, but since I had unlocked sitting and watching all phenomena, my perception spanned 20 miles and turned their lethal traps into a scenic walk that I cleared in 10 minutes. When the notification scrolled that I was entering the ultimate stage, the entire pavilion fell into a deathly silence, and Chu Zhang stopped breathing for a second, his heart hammering against his ribs. I entered the ultimate stage where reality shifted into an interstellar war zone, and as a dozen black-armored mid-stage, 2-soul experts surged from a tunnel, I triggered 4 major buffs and moved like lightning. I thought about not wanting to do this again, as spear strikes turned into a symphony of slaughter, and by the time I finished, 15 mid-stage experts were dead, with my kill count climbing to 300 over the next several hours. Shi Ting, with all her Daobone talent, had lasted 5 hours, but I pushed through 10 until a peak. 2-soul expert broke his shackles and touched the 3-soul realm, shattering my shoulder and cracking my ribs with a sword strike. I joked internally that I was not okay, but because the pain spike only triggered finding joy in sorrow, I was faster, stronger, and completely unhinged as I detonated my Guanyuan acupoint to pour 10 times my limit into Burning Sea, leveling the battlefield and turning my enemy to ash. Ultimate stage cleared. I appeared before Bai Gui, the guardian spirit, who looked at me, stunned, and said, 10,000 years, and you are the first. He dropped the truth that the White Dragon civilization was a level 3 titan ruling billions of systems, and while he made me the sole inheritor of the White Dragon True God Tome, he warned me that Earth was being watched by the Kangshu civilization and that this inheritance had to be handled carefully. Under his guidance, I also claimed the Star Piercer sword technique to keep my new power hidden behind a heaven-ranked facade. I stepped out of the White Dragon Court and the sky lit up with 4 pillars of gold light punching through the night, causing the plaza to erupt in chaos. When I announced I had secured 2 high-tier heaven-rank inheritances, the professors looked like they'd seen a ghost, with Zhu Hongli shouting to claim me as his prize while Chu Zhang lunged to grab my other shoulder. My phone was blowing up with offers, but my attention shifted to a single message from Chen Zilu. Standing on the silver-white rooftop, Chen Zilu looked at me with a soft, peach blossom smile, and when I teased that taking Elder Q as my mentor would make her my direct senior sister, she flushed a charming shade of pink and scolded me for being smooth-talking. I agreed to the apprenticeship immediately, both for the opportunity and because I couldn't bear to see her sad, and as she explained the usage of the Divine Tao Enlightenment Jade, which required placing it in one's mouth to unlock its true power, my mind was reeling. But then, Bai Gui's voice echoed in my head, delivering a gut-wrenching secret. Zilu suffered from the God-devouring syndrome, and since she was at the one-soul level, she had endured agony a dozen times worse than any cleansing. Her soul gnawed at every time she moved her energy. My heart clenched, and I realized the Jade wasn't just a tool, but her lifeline. I thought to myself that my mental health and my sleep schedule are in a toxic relationship, but compared to her suffering, my own struggles felt small. I went to the 108th floor to meet Chu Zhang, and during the apprenticeship ceremony, he gifted me an uncut Dao Enlightenment Jade, a 30% speed boost, but casually remarked that the divine Dao Enlightenment Jade Zilu gave me was priceless, something even transcendent families would kill for. I clutched the stone, my resolve hardening, and learned that the Genius Cup's grand prize included Extreme C Original Liquid, the only thing that could alleviate her syndrome, so I realized I wasn't just fighting for glory, I was fighting for her. My path was clear: win the Genius Cup, earn a transfer to White Dragon University, and secure a spot in the Battle of the Stars to reach the Seven Soul Realm. So I started by unlocking the White Dragon True God Tome. It was a supreme secret from a level 3 civilization, but cultivation felt like trying to punch a steel wall. So after 6 hours of zero progress, I took Zilu's advice and placed the jade in my mouth. The change was instantaneous, as a strange, divine energy swept through me, and the previously incomprehensible techniques became crystal clear, allowing me to push the tome from 0% to 3% in one night because the jade was even more broken than I'd imagined. Back at Penglai, I used the jade to tackle the bottleneck in my Great Sun Spear art, and as the state of enlightenment descended again, I finally grasped the essence of the fourth move, Boiling Sea. It wasn't about heat, but about the sea, so my spear aura expanded into a scorching ocean of sunlight that could clash head-on with a late-stage second breaching powerhouse, and the 29% mastery barrier was shredded. For the next 2 months, I lived in a cycle of intensive training and combat, and with the jade's help, my progress was ludicrous. 9 steps treading stars hit 10%. Mastery, Heavenly Tribulation Fist reached 9%, and my White Dragon True God Manual climbed to 19%, while I even perfected my own Cold Sun Spear art to 50% minor mastery. My toxic trait is thinking I can finish a 10-hour task in 20 minutes, but for once, the math was actually mathing. On April 18th, the Genius Cup notification hit my bracelet, signaling a battle royale for 500 prodigies from 51 schools in the mountains and rivers secret realm, with a massive prize pool of 300 million credits and the Extreme Sea Original Liquid. I scanned the data Zhu Hongli sent over regarding Galaxy University's Li Qi and the northern region's Lin Qingshou, all mid-stage, second breach powerhouses who thought the trophy was already theirs, but I didn't hesitate, knowing I was coming for that top spot. I stepped into the second floor of the Penglai Heaven Tower and cleared the assessment in just 30 minutes, prompting a golden river of star energy to cascade from the heavens, wash over me, and boost my physical strength by a clean 50%. That night, I retreated into seclusion and, with the Divine Tao Enlightenment Jade firmly in my mouth, I pushed the White Dragon True God Manual past the 20% milestone, cementing my new foundation. By the next morning, I was back in the virtual arena for my Starry Sky Rank 2 promotion, where my opponent, a mid-stage second breach Daobone prodigy, didn't stand a chance. 10 moves in, I unleashed Boiling Sea, and the resulting storm of sunlight flooded the arena, leaving him zero room to resist. And as I reached rank 2 as a freshman, the system unlocked the achievement, bare minimum, effectively placing me among the top-tier talents of the elite schools. April 20th arrived, and we boarded the special flight to the mountains and rivers secret realm, where Elder Bai, our silver-haired guardian, laid out the expectations. Lu Wangxiao for the top 16, Shen Changxi and Yun Qinger for the top 8. And finally, his gaze locked onto mine as he said, "You Xin, take the championship." The cabin fell silent, though Yun Qinger offered a soft, knowing smile. And for me, the win wasn't about prestige, it was about the Extreme Sea, original liquid I needed to save Zilu from the God-devouring syndrome. When we touched down at the Bird's Nest Stadium in Donghai City, over 100,000 spectators roared, and as we stepped onto the plaza, a team from Donghai University arrived like falling stars, bathing the area in an oppressive aura. Lu Wangxiao scoffed about them showing off with battle armor, but I didn't laugh, focusing instead on their leader, Wang Bo, whose eyes burned with a clear intent to crush Penglai. Soon, the heavy hitters arrived Galaxy University and Northern Region University, and seeing the arrogant Li Qi, the aloof Lin Qingshui, and my old rival, Wan Yao Yang, I felt the familiar weight of a challenge. At 9 a.m., the sky turned ink black, a pair of colossal golden eyes manifested above, and a figure named Chu Jingye appeared with a presence so overwhelming it felt like the world itself was bowing, marking the start of the Genius Cup. In a blink, I was teleported into the center of a wasteland where 10 peaks pierced the clouds in the distance, each hiding legendary fortuitous encounters, so I pushed my gale steps and velocity control to 500% efficiency, thinking that while my motivation is currently buffering, my legs are not. I broke the sound barrier, leaving everyone behind, and when a few ambitious contestants tried to trap me with gravity fields and a materialized quagmire, I tapped into the martial will that only fourth-breaching experts usually possess and shredded their domains with a flurry of spear strikes. A few seconds later, the yellow-haired youth who dared to block my path was lying on the ground with a hole through his chest, marking Huang Liang as eliminated. I didn't stop, and within 40 minutes, I had sprinted 800 kilometers, leaving even Lin Qingshu in the dust. By the time I hit the 900-kilometer mark, 50 Shadow Race youths swarmed me, their shrieks designed to shatter a warrior's focus. But I just triggered Army Breaker, and my spear became a tidal wave of destruction that purged the area in less than a minute. A late-stage, second-breach shadow creature lunged at me with a world-ending aura, but I didn't back down. Let the star energy in my Guanyuan acupoint roar to life, and unleashed Great Sun, piercing the clouds. My spear erupted with the striking a stone with an egg buff, doubling my damage output, and with a sickening crunch, the creature was reduced to dust in a one-shot kill. The audience fell dead silent. Mo Zishuan's face soured, and Elder Bai just stroked his beard with a faint smile, noting, "That is the might You Xin should possess." I moved through the dense forest, reaching the 10 divine mountains, and because I activated omniscient insight, the world shifted, allowing me to map treasures with lethal efficiency and find dozens of top-tier encounters on the first peak alone. By a cliff, I snatched 6 profound frost ice marrow bones and devoured them on the spot, feeling my cells undergo a frantic metamorphosis, followed by the Moonhouse Spirit Spring and the 10-flame Golden Lotus, all while ignoring the mid-grade trinkets and leaving the teachers watching the feed in a state of absolute meltdown. When Li Qi and Lin Qingshu finally arrived, they were scrapping over the mid-grade scraps I'd discarded, and when Li Qi intercepted me near a cliff to posture for a grand battle, I shrugged, gave him the treasure tree he was guarding, and walked away toward a summit treasure, leaving him trembling with humiliation. In an hour, I'd secured 40 top-grade encounters, a haul equivalent to 10 Starry Sky baptisms, so I found a cave, cranked the White Dragon True God manual to its limit, and began refining, feeling my 8th star vein hum as it pushed me to the brink of a late-stage second breach breakthrough. Suddenly, my martial will spiked, and Wan Yaoyang stomped toward my cave with a sadistic grin, having spent the whole trial finding nothing and deciding his frustration was about to become my problem. I stood up, shaking off the meditative calm, and a spear aura flickered, shattering the cave walls and forcing him to scramble back as I said coldly, "You destroyed my cultivation spot." He lunged with a tide of sword light, but at the first collision, his face drained of color because my strength was a tidal wave while his was a paper boat. He tried to hit me with his abyssal gaze, but my martial will snapped it back at him like a rubber band, and in that heartbeat, my spear punched through his chest. Shen Changxi and Yun Qinger arrived just in time to see the aftermath and were speechless when I told them I'd been camped in the cave the whole time while they scrambled for points. As the bracelets vibrated with our final qualification, I realized I'd made the top 32 without even trying. Back at the stadium, the air was electric as Chu Jingye announced the finals, and because Peng Lei had 6 in the finals despite Lu Wanxiao being ousted by Li Qi, I knew Li Qi would be my final wall. In my first match, I faced Wang Xuan, who came at me with a loud mouth, so I became a blur of motion and sent him flying with one sweep of my spear like a broken kite, advancing while watching Li Qi and Lin Qingshu's expressions tighten. Soon, the top 16 roster was locked, and when the announcement came for You Xin versus Wang Bo, the crowd erupted for the showdown between the top dogs of Donghai and Peng Lei. Wang Bo growled, "Thought we'd meet in the finals," and I replied, "Same." As we moved simultaneously, our spear auras colliding with a roar that shook the arena. Wang Bo tried to lean on his superior cultivation art to suppress me, but he folded after a single exchange, and when he surged forward, I turned my spear into a whirlwind of shadows, condensing an orange-red sun that threatened to consume him. He barely neutralized it with his Raging Tide domain, but he never got his counterattack, and I unleashed the full power of the White Dragon, True God manual, turning my spear into a blur of lightning and running it through his chest before he could even reach his ultimate move. Yu Xing wins. The stadium erupted as the win was total, and I hadn't even touched my trump cards. The quarterfinals were next, and though everyone expected a war against Galaxy University's Wang Xuan, I just opened with the Boiling Sea ultimate move, which created a literal ocean of sunlight that engulfed the arena and instantly triggered his protection mechanism for another one shot that left the teachers wide-eyed at my star energy control. Meanwhile, Yun Qinger smashed her way through with 400 strikes per second, while Li Qi and Lin Qingshui advanced with surgical ease. The semifinals set me against Qinger, and though I told her not to hold back, she unleashed a sky-blotting barrage of hammer shadows that I ended in 30 seconds because my star energy was on a different level. On the other side, Li Qi crushed Lin Qingshu with a single move, his despising saber light showing he hadn't even begun to take us seriously. The championship match was pure static electricity as 110,000 people were screaming, and Li Qi looked at me to ask why I hadn't fought for that mid-grade encounter back in the secret realm. "Because it was beneath me," I said. I had already taken the top-grade ones, and his pupils flickered as the realization finally hit him that I had cleaned the place out. The match started in a blur, and we traded blows until Li Qi's saber domain forced me into a defensive rhythm, where he grinned and assumed he'd locked me in his freezing winter domain by saying, "In my domain, you're countered. You've lost." I didn't blink, but instead shattered his ice with a roar of spear aura and launched my cold sun spear art, where the white sun I summoned didn't just reject the cold, it devoured it to grow stronger. Li Qi's desperate defense crumbled, and I sent him flying out of the arena. I won, and while I thought my retirement plan is winning the lottery, the prize I really wanted was the Extreme C Original Liquid, so I didn't care about the cameras as I called Zilu immediately to say, "Senior sister, I won. I kept my promise." Back at Penglai, the Federation went into a frenzy, my name was everywhere, and transcendent families like the Li, Zhou, and Chen clans came crawling with massive bribes, trying to recruit the primal talent prodigy, unaware that my talent had already evolved and they were chasing a ghost. Elder Bai and Teacher Zhu eventually arrived to deliver the reality check, warning me about the upcoming life or death tempering in the Starry Sky Tunnel and the dangers of playing politics with the transcendent families. Though Elder Bai was stunned when he saw my cold sun spear art, as improving a classic art like that was a historic first. Even the legendary Bai Long would have been impressed by. Once they left, I cashed out my 300 million credits, the Tao Comprehension Divine Jade, the liquid, and a dragon saliva fruit. I ate the fruit instantly, feeling my life level soar, and even received a call from the new professionals center to apologize for their previous underestimation with a 130 million credit bonus, proving that money really is the best therapist. By April 28th, I was sitting in my training room when my star veins finally roared, and the notification echoed in my mind. Milestone achieved, world-renowned, reward, talent restructuring. My talent surged from new life to Dao Bone, and I unlocked the Battle Soul domain, which granted me Grievous Wound to stop healing, Bone Armor to tank and reflect, and Berserk to triple my stats, meaning my combat power didn't just increase, it shattered the ceiling. As I sat there, grinning, a message pinged on my phone that Beilong University had officially approved my transfer, and it was time to level up. I politely turned down every offer from the Transcendent families because they were beautiful traps, and I had no interest in being someone else's puppet, so after bidding farewell to Teacher Zhu and Elder Bai, I boarded the flight to Beilong University, unaware that a woman with golden pupils in the Lai clan had already marked my file with an icy, murderous intent. I arrived at Beilong University and immediately sought out Chen Zilu to press the Extreme C original liquid into her hands, but she was furious, knowing it was the key to my own martial will. When I tried to demonstrate my will to reassure her, my energy accidentally swept through her, an awkward moment that left us both flushing, and though she eventually accepted the gift, she countered by handing me a legendary spatial treasure, a silver-white bracelet with 1,000 cubic meters of storage that could slow time to preserve spiritual herbs. She pretended to be stern, insisting I'd need it for the Starry Sky Tunnel, and I finally buckled and accepted. Teacher Chu Zhang welcomed me with a grade A student contract, including 50 million in annual resources, custom Earth-tier weapons, and exclusive tempering opportunities, and he even set me up in Starry Moon number 11, right next to Zilu. Back in my new villa, I spent 130 million credits on a sleek Earth-tier battle armor, the Cold Sun Spear, and the Falling Star Bow. The next day, I entered the level 2 star energy baptism, where the crimson mist felt like acid, a pain mirroring the second level of the martial arts heavenly ladder. So I gritted my teeth through 3 hours of agony until my 12th star vein ignited. The breakthrough to the peak of the second breach was thunderous, my energy circulating in a perfect, endless loop, and I was now confident I could take down a pre-third breach powerhouse without breaking a sweat. On May 1st, Federation Memorial Day, I flew back to An City with Zhao Qingli to visit her mother, Chen Qingyun, the CEO of the New Professional Center, who promoted me to a level 5 reserve new professional, but quickly shifted to a darker tone. She needed me as the city's image ambassador, offering a 50 million credit endorsement to lure powerful defenders to the city because traces of the shadow race were appearing beyond our local tunnel and a disaster was coming. So I signed without hesitation since it meant protecting my home. As I left, a photo on her desk caught my eye of Chen Qingyun standing with a woman who looked exactly like Chen Zilu, and Qingyun explained it was her superior, Zhou Lu, who had passed away years ago, leaving behind a daughter who was bullied for a strange illness, a description matching Zilu's past. My heart sank, and when I whispered, "What was her daughter's name?" she replied, "Chen Zilu." That night, my home was filled with warmth, family, and fireworks. But miles away on a lonely mountain, Zilu stood in the dark on the anniversary of her mother's death. She clutched the necklace I'd given her, hovering over my contact info, but she never hit call, because fear paralyzed her, fear that I was too busy, or that I simply didn't care. She bought a gift to surprise me, but while walking the streets, she spotted me with Zhao Qingli, stood frozen with her knuckles white, and disappeared into the night. I didn't know and spent days trying to reach her, but my messages went into a void until May 4th, when I forced myself to track her down through my old high school director, donned my armor, and tore toward her mountain villa like a streak of black lightning. The house felt like a tomb, and my telekinesis picked up the cold, lingering traces of her presence. I dialed her number one last time, and a stranger answered, Zhao Yingluo, who hissed, "Did you break her heart? Where is she?" I demanded. "She went to the Extreme C, Star System, Starry Sky Tunnel alone," Yingluo retorted, her voice dripping with ice. "Her health was already failing. She took this risk because of you, and that place is a death trap with third-breaching enemies everywhere she's going there to die." My world tilted, and while I thought my mental health and my sleep schedule are in a toxic relationship, the cold dread in my gut was worse, so I called Qiu Zhang, demanding immediate transport to the Extreme C. He tried to argue it was too soon, but he sensed the iron in my voice and agreed to meet me at the university. I returned home, only to say a hurried, painful goodbye to my parents and sister, and then I vanished into the sky, chasing a shadow. I handed Yu Ting a red beauty fruit, left 10 million credits and a stash of spiritual artifacts for my parents, and left, deciding I didn't want to drag out the goodbyes because my social battery had already left the group chat. 20 minutes later, I landed in Tianhai City, where Qiu Zhang was waiting with a ring-shaped aircraft. As we burned toward the Starry Sky Tunnel, Chai Zhang laid out the reality of Marshall Planet No. 7. An ancient battlefield holding over 20 grade A treasures that was crawling with powerhouses from the Flame and Guian civilizations, both far more advanced than ours, and told me that if I saw them, I was to run. He also confirmed that Zilu's vitals were stable, though the planet's interference blocked signals, and noted, "You have a sensing function on your bracelets. Stay within 1,000 kilometers and you'll find her." I nodded, knowing nothing else mattered, and that I was bringing her home. We reached the Donghai tunnel base, a jagged, multicolored rift tearing through the sky, where I met Ting, a near third breach powerhouse assigned to assist me, and after we signed the life and death agreement acknowledging the 15% mortality rate, we leapt into the rift. Space-time twisted, tearing at my organs until my senses blurred, but just as the agony peaked, a chime rang out. System alert, milestone stowaway achieved, reward, terrain adaptation, stealth traversal. The pain vanished. I was suddenly perfectly calibrated to the alien environment, but my martial will immediately flared because two killing intents were closing in on our landing zone. Ting, still reeling from the jump, told me to fall back, but I was already moving as I countered, one for each of us, and became a bolt of lightning. Two Flame Civilization youths in red armor were waiting as tunnel rats hunting newcomers who hadn't adapted to the gravity yet, and they grinned while seeing us as easy prey, but their smiles died when my spear connected with the first youth's weapon. A tidal wave of power multiplied by 405% from my stacked passives shattered his guard, and as he spat blood with his eyes wide in disbelief, I thought task failed successfully while I hammered him with an 8-hit combo before finishing him with boiling sea. The explosion, leaving nothing but dust. I turned to the second youth, who was tangling with Ting, and we overwhelmed him in 30 seconds, piercing his throat. Ting stared at me, breathless, and I didn't waste time explaining but led her to a nearby cave I'd sensed the rat's stash, which was a gold mine of spiritual artifacts. I threw some recovery items to Ting and stuffed the rest into the spatial bracelet Zilu had given me, thinking, I don't need therapy, I need unlimited money. System alert, expanding territories title unlocked, passive, team combat attribute buff plus 30% within 100 meters. Back at the tunnel entrance, Chuzang watched the projection of our vitals, and when a skeptical elder from Starry Sky University sneered, "They'll be dead in minutes," the red dots on the map flickered out, so Chuzang just smiled and said, "Don't worry, You Xin already handled them." We pushed toward Thundersound Valley, but my martial will sensed an ambush near an abyss, and I signaled Ting to move just as a crimson short sword hissed toward my back. I swatted it away as 5 figures emerged, led by a brand-faced youth named Yun Huo, who commanded with sickening arrogance, "Go scout the path for us." Ting tensed, but I didn't, simply saying, "Kill them all." I launched myself at Yun Yi, the blue-haired youth assigned to stop me, and because he held his saber with utter contempt, thinking I was just another lamb, I triggered the second gear of my Battle Soul domain and hit him with Scorching Sunstorm, my spear erupting like a miniature star to obliterate his saber wave and punch straight through his chest. Yun Yi, a powerhouse approaching the third breach, crumpled after one spear strike, a sight that paralyzed Yun Huo and his remaining lackeys. For a peek, second breacher from a backwater level 0.7 civilization had just one-shot their peer. Panic flickered in Yun Huo's eyes, and he instantly unleashed his talent domain, flooding the area with a sea of fire. So while Ting countered with her own frost domain, I surged forward to engage him directly as he moved to strike her. Thanks to my stowaway adaptation and the superior energy of my White Dragon True God manual, the flames meant nothing to me, and I pressed the assault until Yun Huo panicked, triggered an escape secret art, and abandoned his subordinates to die. I didn't chase him but instead turned to the 3 remaining enemies, where a quick boiling sea blast reduced 2 to red mist, leaving only the wounded, white-haired Yin Chen. "Scout the path or die," I said in the local tongue, and he obeyed, trekking toward the abyss where I knew a lion-like spirit beast guarded 6 5-color treasure lotuses. He killed the beast, but the moment he reached for the prize, my arrow silenced him from 1,000 meters away, and after Ting and I claimed the lotuses and split them equally, my expanding territory's buff ticked up by another 1%, for it seemed, the more I culled the alien ranks, the stronger my team-wide aura became. We eventually reached a quiet valley where Ting proposed we part ways, realizing that while she was sent to protect me, I had been the one carrying the weight all along. So I agreed and cautioned her against third breachers before she departed. I found a cave, consumed my share of the lotuses, and pushed my life level through the ceiling, until, when I opened my eyes, the ground trembled because I had hit the realm approaching the third breach, making me 5 times stronger and ready for anything. I tracked a familiar, piercing spear intent Zilus to a clearing littered with corpses of Guian giants, and though she had won, bloodstains led away toward Thundersound Valley, causing worry to gnaw at me because I knew she was injured and in the throes of her spirit-devouring syndrome. 2 days later, the valley's 10 thunder mountains erupted, signaling the arrival of the Grade A Thunder Source Spirit Paste. So while hundreds of genius-level aliens from the Flame and Guian civilizations swarmed the valley, I used my stealth traversal to slip past them, invisible to their sensors. I bypassed a massive stone wall, guarding a mid-stage, third-breaching beast using Martial God's instant step, and stood before the purple gold liquid. I downed the paste in one go, felt the volcanic energy trigger a tear up in my life level, and after a quick spear strike exit, I vanished before the aliens even knew the treasure was gone. Outside the tunnel, my professors watched the feat in stunned silence, for I had cleared the objective in 10 minutes. But the celebration died as Wang Kanglong pointed to a new feed where Su Hai Yue and 3 others were being systematically butchered by 7 Flame Civilization warriors, including 2 third breachers. Just as the end seemed certain, I tore through the air, and clad in my black armor while wielding the Cold Sun Spear, I drove my weapon into the chest of a third breaching powerhouse, planting myself firmly between them and my comrades. Yun Huo paled as he realized who I was, stammering, "Senior brother Zhu Hua, it's that meteor-level genius from Blue Star." Zhu Hua scoffed, his eyes filled with casual malice, and said, "Not even third breach, and you're already throwing your life away," before lunging with a spear that conjured hundreds of shadows to blot out the sun. I didn't blink, but with a flick of my wrist, I parried every strike before closing the distance in a blur and sweeping my spear, unleashing 100,000 strands of boiling star energy that forced Zhu Hua back. His shock was palpable because he hadn't expected my explosive output to dwarf his own. So seeing an opening, I slammed into the third gear of my battle soul domain, Berserk, which caused a sea of blood to erupt and instantly slashed his attributes by 50% while doubling mine. The White Turtle, the guardian of the level 3 civilization, looked on in stunned silence and asked, "You Xin, how do you have a talent domain?" I didn't have time for a Q&A, so I transformed the Cold Sun Spear into a 30-meter wide sun, weaving fire and frost into a single, unstoppable thrust that shattered Zhu Hua's defenses like glass and punched through his chest. He managed to retreat, gasping as he spiked his speed to escape, but he didn't get far, for I knocked an arrow on my falling star bow and let it fly, watching as a golden streak pierced his skull from 10,000 meters away. I thought to myself that my retirement plan is winning the lottery as I watched the rest of the Flame Civilization cowards scramble, and Su Hei Yue and her team helped me mop them up in minutes. I spent the next day in a hidden cave, refining the Thundersource spirit paste, and when I finally broke through to the third breach, my martial aura was so dense it blew a 100-meter crater into the bedrock. The White Turtle reappeared, his gaze lingering on my Dao bone as he mused, "You have secrets, you Xing, but that's a good thing. Carry my master's legacy well." I took off, searching for Zilu, and after scouring 6 grade zones, my bracelet finally pinged with a red dot deep in the Black Desolation Ridge. I arrived to find Zilu cornered by Bei Li, a top-tier prodigy of the Flame Civilization, and 6 of his elites, and just as I leveled my spear after Bei Li ordered 2 third breachers to intercept me, a silver flash eclipsed my vision as Zilu, pale and bleeding from a jagged abdominal wound, stood between us with her silver spear knocking the elites back. "You bastard," she hissed, her voice weak but fierce. "Who told you to come?" "I was afraid you'd die," I replied. Bei Li stepped forward, his cruelty evident, and sneered, "7 against 2, and one of you is half dead. This is a massacre." Zilu tried to shield me, whispering for me to run, but I gently pulled her behind me, saying, "Stay back, senior sister, I've got this." I ignited the third gear of my battle soul domain and vanished, and a heartbeat later, the first flame genius hit the ground, or rather, the crater where his body used to be, leaving the others frozen as their confidence evaporated. Bei Li roared for them to attack, but I was already weaving a scorching sun, freezing pool, which shredded 2 more geniuses instantly. Bei Li, realizing his lackeys were useless, finally went all out by stacking 3 talent domains. So as his aura spiked and the pressure forced me to dig my heels into the earth, we collided with our weapons, clashing in a deafening rhythm. I was holding my own, but Zilu, ignoring her agony, stepped in and pierced Bei Li's blind spot, turning the tide until, with the 2 of us working in perfect, fluid harmony, the peerless genius crumbled and his remaining subordinates simply turned and fled. Bei Li, that meteor-level genius, didn't even get a death monologue, for as he turned to bolt with his armor's thrusters screaming at 5-fold speed, I drew the falling star bow and channeled a star's worth of energy into a single golden shaft. It tracked him for a heartbeat before tearing through his skull in a one-shot kill, and thinking task failed successfully, I let the bow fade as I turned to Zilu. Her abdomen was a mess, the wound reopened from our fight, and my chest tightened as she lied with a weak smile. "I'm fine, there are treasures left in this ridge, so go, don't worry about me." "No treasure is worth more than you," I said, causing her to flinch and turn away to hide the tremor in her hands before she asked, "What reward could you possibly want for being a hero?" I sighed and came clean, laying out everything: the trip to An City, the endorsement meeting with Zhao Qingli, and the truth behind our date, for I hadn't stood her up. I'd just been trying to protect her from more drama. As I spoke, the tension in her shoulders bled away and her eyes turned glassy, and the silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. It was everything we hadn't said for months. System alert, milestone, broken mirror made whole achieved. Reward, restoration ability, monthly cooldown. System alert, favorability reached close friend, title unlocked, intimate friend of the Martial Saint. Reward, Martial Saint, bond, massive passive buffs when fighting together. I reached for her wound, ignoring her hesitation, and said, "Let me fix this," then pressed my hand against the jagged tear and triggered broken mirror made whole. Warmth flooded my palm, and beneath my fingers, the flesh knitted itself back together until, in 10 seconds, the hole was gone and not even a scar remained. "What is that?" she whispered, her eyes wide. "My little secret," I grinned. "Keep it safe." She led me to a hidden core space and handed me a few unassuming black lumps. Haiwang marrow, a top-tier genetic accelerant that you kill for, and I knew she'd risked everything to get it. I didn't waste a second, swallowing a piece and sinking into meditation. And with the Marshall Saint bond and the marrow pulsing through my veins, my cultivation sprinted forward until, 2 days later, my Guanyuan acupoint shattered its limits, liquid vitality flooding my body. I reached the third soul stage, my physique evolving into a peak-grade profound body, and I was finally her equal. I didn't stop, but dove into the martial Dao heavenly ladder for the 5th floor, where the trial demanded I forge my own path, but I lost my way, drowning in the void. Just as I was about to fade, Zilu's image anchored me, and I realized that emptiness and beauty weren't opposites, they were the same truth. So I swung my spear, merging life and death, spring and winter, until the Luotian spear was born. The gold monument rose, etching my name as a martial Dao ancestor, and when I surfaced, Zilu was waiting with her face etched with worry. So I took her hand and said, "I'm back." But trouble was brewing, for back in the Flame Civilization, old man Ancheng High was in a blood rage over Bailey's death and was sending 3 monsters far beyond Bailey's level, armed with a 4th soul stage treasure to come for us. Meanwhile, my mind was flooded with new titles: Spear Dao Ancestor, Alternative Enlightenment, Unwavering Will, and the Resetter, and I realized my new domain would let my spear arts ignore physical defenses entirely, dealing pure, world-destroying damage and essentially turning me into a cheat code. I looked at Zilu, waiting in her white dress, and realized that while 6 days had passed for the world, I had spent 6 years refining my soul in the ladder, transforming from the boy who entered this ridge into a force of nature ready for whatever the Flame Civilization threw at us. Zilu met my gaze with a playful glint in her eyes and challenged me to a spar where we agreed to shelve our talent abilities and the myriad manifestations spear domain to rely solely on raw technique. She opened with a gust of freezing wind, her silver spear weaving a dance of frost and gale with momentum terrifying enough to crush any peer. But I didn't budge and let the black dragon spear flow, merging my 4 seasons of intent: birth, growth, harvest, and storage into a strike that pierced the very heavens. When our weapons locked, the impact forced Zilu to burn through her star energy just to hold her ground. And though she was stunned by the defeat, she wasn't angry. She was purely proud, teasing me as a monster, while noting that my extreme affinity with nature would make my eventual ascent to the 6th soul stage a breeze. But our peace was short-lived. From miles away, 3 Flame Civilization elites Mina, Luosin, and Kid burst from a spatial tunnel to claim my head, and since they were heavy hitters, each rivaling an invincible Dao bone, they planned to massacre every Earth genius in the sector if they couldn't find me. I pushed aside the news of the Federation's discovery of a god-level opportunity zone to focus on the immediate threat, thinking that my brain has 37 tabs open and I can't find where the music is coming from. Then Zilu and I slipped into the Jihai crust, using our Martial Saint bond to cloak our approach. We reached the core, a massive, ancient stone glowing with faint blue light, but when Zilu reached out, the divine feedback sent her reeling, pale and shaking, while I barely felt a tingle because thanks to unwavering will, I walked through the barrier like it was a summer breeze. I grabbed Zilu's hand, engaged martial god flash step, and blurred through the lethal spatial turbulence into a cavern of starlight, where I didn't just take the Jihai essence pillar but bottled 8 years of accumulated essence into 8 vials, worth 1 billion credits each, sliding forward to Zilu while ignoring her flushed protests. Then, the air turned jagged with intent, and we rocketed out of the rift just in time to see Mina cornering shitting. I moved like a lightning strike, my spear snapping Mina's swordlight as if it were glass, and though Mina grinned as a predator realizing its prey was a wolf, I burned every buff I had, Red Beauty, Asks the Tao, and War God, and drove my spear through her heart in 3 seconds, turning a meteor-level genius into history. I stripped her armor, and, sensing the 100-odd aliens closing in, grinned while thinking that I'm not arguing. I'm just explaining why I'm right, you shouldn't have come. Zilu and shitting flanked me as the swarm crested the hill, and we moved as one, a storm of iron and light where spear gleams erupted like a binary star, tearing through the vanguard and carving a path of red across the plain until a 7-colored ray of light tore from the horizon, moving faster than thought. It should have erased me, but a phantom, Zilu flickered into existence to tank the blast, vanishing in a spray of light as a divine clone, sacrificed to buy me a breath of time. I roared, "Senior sister," with my heart stopping, but Zilu was still right there, alive and horrified, just as the crystal behind us detonated into a 1,000-mile death zone that expanded in real time. I didn't hesitate, but triggered alternative enlightenment to drag the girls into the only path of survival in a sea of destruction, and we escaped as the world behind us vaporized into nothing. I didn't let the girls catch their breath, but turned toward the fleeing Luosin, my blood turning to liquid ice as I declared, "You're next." He realized too late that I wasn't just surviving, but hunting. As he triggered his triple domain burst and raised his saber for a final, desperate stand, I descended like a thunderbolt and shattered his saber at the first touch of my spear. My second strike drove straight through Luosin, pulverizing his internal organs, and my third shattered his skull, leaving him to cease to exist in a spray of gore. I pulled my spear back and retreated to the boulder, my heart heavy as I looked at Zilu, whose face was deathly pale because, as the White Turtle warned, destroying a divine soul clone is equivalent to losing half one's life, and her foundation was crippled with no cure within our entire civilization. I remained silent, piling the spoils from the Jihai crust before the girls' 10 low-grade and 3 mid-grade opportunities, and as they each took 2, embarrassed by the disparity, I caught Zilu's wrist and pressed all 4 bottles of Jihai essence into her palm. "What are you doing?" she snapped, though her cheeks flushed with a mix of annoyance and vulnerability. "The essence will heal you," I whispered. "I can't repay this favor, but you need it." She finally accepted them, her gaze lingering on me as she promised, "I'll wait for your return. I have something that will help you reach the 4th soul stage." With them gone, I turned into a scavenger, using omniscient insight to strip mine ancient star no. 7, and over the next 3 weeks, I devoured 40 low-grade, a dozen mid-grade, and 3 high-grade opportunities, practically living in my own personal gym until the bottleneck of the early 3rd soul stage shattered. By the time I emerged, I was late 3rd soul stage, and a casual flick of my spear turned a mountain peak into dust 100 meters away, making me muse that my retirement plan is winning the lottery, though my bank account and my dreams felt like they were both on life support. When I met Choosing at the exit, I didn't bother masking my aura, and his eyes nearly popped out because 3 weeks was not just fast, but monstrous. I handed over the salvage, including the damaged heaven rank armor, and walked away with 6.3 billion credits, feeling like I was living in a glitch. On the flight back, Chuzang dropped a bomb by signing me up for the 10-school league tournament in 2 weeks, clearly assuming I was a default champion, but my mind was on the astral sea. "It's a god-level zone," Chuzang explained as his face darkened. "No realm restrictions, only a cap on talent. Only Dao Bone level or below can enter, so you'll be facing invincible Dao Bones from level 1 civilizations." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have a talent domain, right? Keep that buried. If the Divine Hidden Organization or even our own Federation suits get wind of a primal talent with a domain, they'll dissect you." Back on Earth, Zilu was fighting her own war, for though her foundation was shattered, she kept it hidden and called her father to request the family's blood jade divine art to secure a treasure for me, leading her family to counter with a marriage arrangement to Zhou Xingkong, a transcendent from a rival house. "Grandpa," she said, her voice like steel, "I like a nameless boy from N City. He isn't a noble, but he's worth more than your entire legacy." And she hung up, staring out the window and wondering if my growth could actually keep pace with the monsters ahead. She didn't know about the White Turtle or the stakes of the upcoming civilization crossing, where Earth would be promoted to level 1 if it survived, causing my talent to surge. In the final half-month, I pushed my Luotian spearmanship to a new peak, perfecting the 4 suns, crossing the sky technique, and fueling my White Dragon True God points to the brink. On July 29th, the notification chimed that the 10 Universities League was starting, so I pushed open the training room door with my aura coiled tight as an abyss, armor catching the morning light, and fixed my focus on the northern arena while murmuring, 10 universities. I hope at least one of you can survive a single spear strike. The League was the event of the year, a gauntlet held in the virtual civilization battlefield, and as I stepped into the venue to clear 8 stages to reach the finals, I heard Lu Wangxiao shouting from the stands with Shen Chengxi, Lin Qinger, and Lin Yushu. Lin Yushu, fresh off a breakthrough to the second soul, loudly boasted about sparring with me later, but I just smiled, knowing he had no idea how much of a gap now existed between us. Nearby, the professors were busy whispering about my early 3rd soul power, unaware that Tang Wuji, currently grinding at the peak of the 2nd soul, was staring at me like I'd grown a second head, and Li Qi's gaze was heavy with humiliated desperation, clearly hoping to reclaim his pride. The bell rang, I stepped into the virtual cabin, and my consciousness surged into a desolate wasteland, where Stage 1 pitted me against 5 fire civilization geniuses, whom I turned into red mist with one flick of my spear. Stage 2 through Stage 8 passed with my strike speed never wavering, and by the time I hit Stage 8, the professors finally leaned forward, expecting me to slow down only to watch me obliterate the early 3rd soul enemies in a single heartbeat. Stage 9 was swept, and Stage 10 saw meteor-level geniuses, equivalent to grade A+ students, shattered into blood mist before they could even react, leaving the senior professors in a collective gasp of shock. I was officially rated grade A+, with rewards consisting of 7 grade D opportunities, 2 grade C, and 1 grade A. Thundersource Spirit paced, causing me to pocket the hall while thinking, I'm not lazy, I'm just on energy-saving mode. The final showdown began with 64 qualifiers on stage, and before the dust could even settle, Li Qi lunged with his blade glowing with the full might of a peak 2nd soul. I didn't even look at him, but simply thrust my spear, the tip tapping his chest with agonizing precision until, boom, he flew hundreds of meters and slammed into the ground with a crater-sized hole in his pride. He'd trained for months, only to fail in 1 second, prompting me to think, task failed successfully. The remaining geniuses realized they were outmatched and swarmed me, stacking their domains like a deck of cards, but I stood dead still, waited for them to get close, and then swept my spear with a strike so vast and unrelenting that it shattered their domains like cheap glass and sent them coughing blood off the platform. Then I stopped holding back, and my late third soul aura detonated, crushing the arena under its sheer weight until Zhou Hong tried to layer 3 talent domains, but I shattered his world with one spear thrust. It turned into a slaughter, and anyone within range was tossed aside like debris until only Shitai remained at the edge, watching me with grim respect. When I dashed toward him, I pulled my strike at the last inch, and he landed steadily, bowed, and conceded, leaving me with the title. 7 billion credits hit my account, which was not enough for the heaven tier armor, but it was a decent start. The high was short-lived because a call from Chuzang chilled my blood with the news that something had happened to my senior sister. I arrived at Villa number 10 to find Zilu collapsed on the sofa, pale as death, for she had broken through to the 5th soul, but the agony had been too much. On the table sat the 8 bottles of Sea of Consciousness origin fluid I had given her, still untouched. Why? I asked, my voice tight. I wanted to save them for you, she whispered. The devotion hit harder than any spear strike, so I forced another bottle into her hands, lying through my teeth that I had an endless supply, and insisted she take the blood jade divine crystal I had for her, as we did not need words. But as I left, the world went black, not night, but an ink-like cosmic void where a voice vibrated inside my skull like grinding tectonic plates. Stay away from Chen Zilu, this is a warning. Above me, a dark purple divine idol manifested in the void, and although it was a soul-crushing pressure that demanded I kneel and the entire world leaned in to break me, I did not budge, instead holding my ground while staring into the dark. I stared at the divine idol, the sheer weight of its transcendent domain bearing down on me like a collapsing star, which was the first time I had felt the crushing reality of that dimensional gap, yet I did not flinch. Suddenly, a figure stepped between us, for Zilu stood with her back to me, barefoot, her long black hair bleeding into a frozen, ethereal white, and she gripped her silver spear as her voice rang out like ice fracturing on a frozen lake. Zhou Xingkong, do you want to die? The pressure shattered instantly, and Zhou Xingkong, a silver-haired youth, hovered in the air with an infuriatingly calm smile as he claimed, I was just testing his willpower. Zilu did not blink, and her extreme cold domain lashed out, meeting his intensity until the air between them sparked with friction, so ignoring her protests, I stepped into the center of their clash. I turned to Zilu with a reassuring smile. This has nothing to do with you, then locked eyes with Zhou Xingkong. I've received your threat, I said, my voice steady. At next year's Star Wars, I'll return it in full. The arena went deathly silent before the crowd erupted, and Zhou Xingkong merely nodded, saying, I'll wait for you there, before he vanished, leaving Zilu glaring at my back. Later that night, her holographic call came through, and she scolded me for my recklessness, but I held my ground, explaining, the more people know about this, the safer I am, as it keeps him from acting in the shadows if the whole world is watching. She stared at me for a long time, then sighed and said, I believe you. I stood by the window, the weight of the day settling in, thinking that my social battery died in 2019, but my drive was far from gone because I had felt weak today, insignificant, but now I had a target since the Star Boundary Sea would open in 2 months, and it was packed with god-tier opportunities. System alert, milestone reached, champion master title unlocked, reward, talent reconstruction. My mouth curled into a smirk, for the game had only just begun. News of my challenge went viral, exposing my late third soul cultivation to the world, and it eventually reached the Li clan, where a woman with golden eyes named Li Qingyu sat with my file. It really is that kid, she murmured, coldly ordering her subordinate, Li Hao, to demand my surrender, for she did not want to recruit me, she wanted to crush my defiance. Inside my mind, the talent reconstruction took hold, and the collective recognition of 3 million people surged through me, causing my Dao bone purity to tick up from 90 to 93, a perfect, controlled gain. If I had hit Transcendent, I would have been locked out of the Star Boundary Sea, but instead, I unlocked a new domain ability, Tide Rise, which was a mental attack powerhouse, granting me telepathic reach, eternal ability resonance, and a soul-piercing echo. The White Turtle had told me that an invincible Dao bone with 6 abilities could take down a Transcendent, and I was too deep now, well on my way. When Li Hao's projection finally appeared to deliver the Li family's invitation, he was professional but vague, trying to sell me on protection against Zhou Xingkong, but I shut him down. I chuckled when I realized the director Li I was talking to worked for the woman who had banished me in my dreams, and I rejected the offer flatly. Li Hao sighed, handing me a personal business card, and added sheepishly, Li Qi is my son, feel free to teach him more lessons if you need to. I watched him fade, feeling nothing but cold indifference because the pass was dead weight, and I had the tournament rewards waiting: Thunder Source, Spirit Paste, and 10 spiritual items with only 2 months to reach the next peak. My gaze drifted to the Marshall St. Bond notification, for I had a feeling I would be needing Zilu's company very soon. I called Zilu, asking if we could cultivate together, and there was a heartbeat of hesitation before she simply said, come over. So I grabbed my spear and bolted for Star Academy. The moment I stepped into her training room, my phone buzzed with a call from Zhao Qingli, and I reached to hang up, but Zilu's voice cut through the air behind me. Don't. What are you afraid of? I answered, and Zhao Qingli's projection flickered to life, her face etched with genuine worry over my challenge to the Transcendent, mentioning she had heard everything from her sister, Chen Qingyun. I laughed it off, promising there was no rush since I had a year to prepare, and although she tried to pin me down for a date, citing a previous promise, I deflected. After the star boundary C. Once the call ended, I turned to find Zilu watching me with those piercing peach blossom eyes, murmuring, "Your class monitor cares about you even more than I do." "Senior sister, you're joking," I stammered him. "I thought you would have given the Tao Enlightenment Divine Jade to her too." I pulled the jade from my chest, right over my heart, and said, "I've always treasured the things you give me." She gave a soft, dismissive hemph and strode toward the door, saying, "Cultivate by yourself," but although she was throwing a tantrum, I was not worried because the fact that she was showing me her emotions meant I was finally getting through to her. I dove into the session, for the Marshall St. Bond was a cheat code and my progression was staggering, so I spent 3 days obsessively experimenting with my footwork, trying to weave the 9 luminary star treading steps into the Luotian spearmanship because I wanted to turn the kinetic energy of my movement into the force of my thrust. Finally, it clicked, and I lunged, star energy igniting beneath my feet, and released the first ultimate move, 4 suns crossing the sky, where the impact shattered the training room's reinforced walls 100 times over. I stood there, breathless and triumphant, having successfully merged 2 distinct arts, and my spear was no longer just a weapon, but a living, evolving entity. From the room next door, Zilu had been watching and muttered, "Integrating footwork into spearmanship, 99.9% of people fail that." Her eyes wide with shock. "Peeking, senior sister?" I projected into her mind. "Who's peeking?" "I'm practicing perception," she snapped, her face flushing as she frantically withdrew her senses. For the next 2 months, we were inseparable, sparring daily, and my cultivation accelerated until September 29th, when I rose from the energy pool at the late 3rd soul stage, ready to go. I flew to the Star C certification point, where the machine recognized my priority status immediately. Soon, we arrived at the entrance of the Star Boundary C in Dongshan Province, a blood-colored wasteland dominated by steel fortresses where 30 of Earth's top Dao-bone geniuses stood gathered, the air thick with tension. Principal Baijing's warning was grim. The mortality rate in the civilization corridor is 50%, so focus on defense and don't fight for mural treasures, or the rules will erase you. Without a word, Zilu and I stepped into the dark passage. The space-time tunnel felt like a drop into an abyss, and when we landed, I instinctively gripped Zilu's hand, leaving a red mark on her skin, but she glared and pulled away, saying, "Let go." We were in a brilliant corridor lined with billions of light specks, each one a civilization rising or falling, and Zhou Hong hovered nearby, seething as he watched us. Suddenly, a snow-white ice lotus bloomed in a mural ahead, a Tier 4 opportunity, and although some Black Dust civilization experts rushed it, the moment one reached out, an invisible force turned him into red mist. I had been using keen observation all along, so I navigated the corridor, bypassing traps until I spotted a purplish-red crystal, which I plucked Tier 3, Grade A, and when the room went silent, other aliens tried to copy me and were instantly obliterated, but I did not care and kept moving. Next was a fiery red fruit, and then, ahead of us, a pale golden 9-leaf flower bloomed, a Tier 5, Grade A plus treasure, and although an alien elite blurred across the distance, I was faster, snatched it, and stored it in my ring. The corridor went deathly quiet, and a 5th soul expert from the Black Dust civilization glared at me and shouted, "Hand it over." Zilu stepped in front of me with her spear, but I pulled her behind me and said, "It's right here, come and take it." The alien roared and charged, but when he hit the 10-meter mark, the corridor's rules triggered, and invisible lasers shredded him into a blood mist before he could finish his threat, causing his companions to shriek and scatter. I did not hesitate and transferred the Tier 5 opportunity to Zilu's bracelet, for I did not need the treasure for myself, I needed her to survive. I could not absorb a Tier 5 opportunity yet, but it was essential for her, so I handed it to her without a word, and although Zilu did not thank me, I knew she would be obsessively looking for a way to pay me back, and even though my toxic trait is thinking I can finish a 1-0-hour task in 20 minutes, at least this time, she did not have the chance to refuse. As we reached the end of the civilization corridor, a massive vortex opened, and before I stepped through, Zilu tied a black hair tie around my wrist, her eyes intense as she said, "Don't lose this. I want to see you in one piece." I grinned, cupping my hands in a mock salute, and said, "I'll keep senior sister's teachings in mind." I plummeted into a blood-red landscape, which was the first star ring, where the time limit was 30 days to find the civilization key. A panel expanded, revealing over 60,000 geniuses from across the galaxy were here, where the higher your bounty, the better the rewards in the Divine Temple. And in this arena, death was the only way to cash out. I thought that my social battery died in 2019, and now this. But I had barely touched ground before a pack of peak 3rd soul Black Dust elites swarmed me, their faces twisted with joy, because they had been held back by the corridor's rules. But here, it was open season. I did not give them a chance, but unleashed the myriad tides domain, the air turning viscous as the tide-like waves slammed into them, and my shout carried the weight of the heavens, a soul-shaking frequency that cracked their focus. I moved like lightning, my spear punching through the first elite's chest before he could even blink, and although the rest panicked and broke, I was faster. So, 4 suns erupted in the air, the 4 seasons intent, and obliterated them in a rain of blood. My bounty spiked to 10th place, while at the top was Guozhen, a level 1 civilization monster, and in third place was Yan Yi, a peak third soul invincible Dao Bone who was currently on a mountain peak receiving a direct kill order from his clan. If you encounter You Xin, kill him. Yang Yi smiled, his eyes full of cold ambition, saying, not only will I take the god-tier opportunity, I'll step on every invincible Dao Bone here to prove I'm the true champion. I kept hunting, and every batch of aliens I slaughtered pushed my bounty higher, landing me in the top 3, while Ming, the Black Dust genius, watched the leaderboard with murder in his eyes and the fire civilization experts panicked across the network, one hissing. 3 months ago, he was early third soul, now he's near the peak. I learned the civilization key was in the Black Mountain range by the Black Coast, due to open in 15 days, so I surged into the sky at Mach 7, a streak of black armor across the crimson horizon, and although the professors were losing their minds back on Earth, I only had eyes for the horizon. On the way, a white-robed youth, Jibei, materialized in the air before me and looked at me with a condescending smile, saying, I mean no harm. I just wanted to propose an alliance against Yan Yi and the other monsters. I did not bite, but said, I'm used to being alone, cold and final. He faded away, but as I turned, a blade flickered from the void, vicious, silent, and aimed at my heart, so without even turning, I just swung my spear backward. Clang! Jibei reappeared, his face twisted into a mask of pure malice, and he shouted, Since you refuse to team up, don't blame me for ending you here. The nether domain dropped like a shroud, devouring all light, and a green full moon rose while spectral chains erupted from the shadows, lashing toward my soul, for he was a quasi-fourth soul, with 4 talent abilities, and he was unleashing everything. I did not flinch, but let out a roar that shattered his chains, and the myriad tides domain surged as I invoked the blood sea domain to trigger berserk, doubling my attributes, while shredding his by 40%, while the Luotian spearmanship ignited as I unleashed the 4 suns crossing the fouled sky. Jibei's smirk died, his face turning ghost white as he finally realized he had not ambushed a prey, but had walked into a meat grinder. I was a cultivator from a 0.7 level civilization, yet I was pushing a quasi-4th soul expert to his absolute breaking point, and Jibei, livid, unleashed his 4th domain, gathering thunderclouds that roiled with reality-warping lightning. 100-meter blade of pure energy slashed down, combining nether and thunder into a strike he had never managed before. I did not blink, but gripped my spear and swung, and 4 massive suns collided with the lightning, shattering it like dry twigs. Jibei's armor disintegrated, and my spear punched through his chest, vaporizing half his body. He did not surrender, but instead grinned with manic desperation and crushed an ancient ring, shouting, If I die, we both go. The resulting blast was a miniature supernova, a mushroom cloud climbing into the stratosphere and shaking the earth for 100 miles. At the monitoring station, Beijing and Chuzang watched in horror, convinced I was dead, but as the dust settled, I stood untouched in the center of a 1,000-meter crater, a shattered Vajrabell falling from my hand. Task failed successfully, I thought, suppressing a smirk. I scavenged a platinum ring from the wreckage, containing 35 Tier 3 opportunities and a mysterious crimson token, and after absorbing Jibei's insights, my bounty hit 138, rocketing me to 2nd place. The leaderboard was a target on my back, and I knew it, and although I thought that my brain has 37 tabs open and I can't find where the music is coming from, one thing was clear. The fire civilization was coming for blood. I retreated to a cave near the Black Coast, and for 20 days, I burned through blood chi and opportunities until the 7th vortex formed, and my life level breached the 3rd soul's limit, making me officially a quasi-4th soul. Rumble. The Black Sea churned as the civilization key tore a pillar of light through the sky, and a massive shadow lunged from the depths, swallowing everything in its path. I did not wait, but turned into a streak of starlight, dove into the churning black water, and met the beast's maw with a spear strike that felt like a falling sun. Behind me, Ming, the Black Dust genius, was hunting, and Yan Yi of the Skyfire civilization was closing in too. So when I reached the entrance to the 3rd star ring, I hit an invisible wall with 59 days remaining, and I had to wait. I found Ming cornering a girl in white who looked unnervingly like Zilu, and although she screamed that she was not an earthling, he did not care. I descended from the clouds, my black dragon spear cutting through his blade tide, which caused Ming to hiss, It's you, Earth civilization, You Xin. I glanced at the girl and said, Talk later, before my gaze shifted back to the monster in front of me who sneered, I've already killed 3 Earth geniuses, and you'll be the 4th. Then let's kill, I whispered. We blurred into motion, clashing like storms, but suddenly, a treasure light erupted from a crater below a grade A opportunity, so we broke off simultaneously, racing toward the crater while clashing in midair. Ming invoked a freezing domain, locking my body for a breath, but I countered with myriad tides, sonic waves shattering his focus. In that split second, the girl in white snatched the treasure and vanished. Ming turned to me with dead eyes and said, I'll kill you first, then her. My thoughts exactly, I replied. He unleashed everything, an absolute domain, annihilation that withered the world to ash, a power that mimicked a transcendent. My spear pierced him clean through, but the body simply dissipated into mist, and I realized I had missed. Ming's smile was chilling as he said, Inside my annihilation domain, your attacks don't exist. He was right, because every time I thrust my spear, the momentum simply dissolved into the void, showing the crushing suppression of an absolute domain. I closed my eyes, letting the world fade until only the essence of my Laotian spearmanship remained, wondering if the world returning to nothingness is just another form of emptiness. He Ming lunged with a blade of pure destruction aimed at my neck, but just as it struck, I moved in a fluid, dragon-like flicker and clanged my spear against his blade, the shockwave nearly buckling the air. I opened my eyes, a divine rhythm flowing through me, and I channeled the void itself, unleashing the prototype of my second ultimate move: annihilate heaven and earth. The strike carried profound cosmic weight, and although He Ming countered with a sea of blades, screaming in triumph as he thought he had blocked me, his sea of blades dissolved like mist against my strike. Squelch! The spear cleaved him from head to toe, and one moment he was the invincible Dao bone of the Black Dust civilization, while the next, he was just a cloud of blood mist. The remaining aliens fled in terror, and in the hidden monitoring space, the two robed observers shook as one gasped, "Spearmanship divine rhythm at the third soul. This kid is a monster." Before I could breathe, a girl in white appeared behind me, and though I spun with my spear leveled at her throat, she only smiled, offering me the grade A opportunity she had just snatched and saying, "Master, I'm returning this." She called herself Wang Zilu, from the Yellow Dragon civilization, and she looked hauntingly like my senior sister, but her aura felt strange, no killing intent, just a weird, inexplicable pull on my heart, and she watched me leave, looking just as confused as I felt. Far away, Yan Yi of the Skyfire civilization laughed at the news of He Ming's death, saying, "Let him have his fun. We'll take the Earth Spirit Marrow first, then harvest his head." I ignored the bounty hunting and focused on the map where the Earth Spirit Marrow, a Tier 3 Grade A+ treasure, was maturing in the Black Cloud Mountain Range, the only Grade A+ opportunity in Zone 3001. I did not wait, but hit the skies, eager to see if these invincible Dao bones could handle more than one strike. 3 days later, I arrived at the canyon where the energy was heavy and suffocating enough to crush most geniuses into the dirt, but the alien pressure did not touch me because my stowaway status made me immune to the environment's dampening effects. I moved through the canyon like a ghost, snatching the glowing marrow while the elites struggled to stand. By the time I rose, 300 geniuses had me boxed in, and a black-armored youth shouted, "Hand it over, and I'll spare you." I did not bother looking at him, but leveled my spear and said, "You aren't qualified to speak to me." Yang Yi stepped from the void with footsteps booming like war drums, and Dong Huang flanked him, his golden spear crackling with power, both wanting the credit for my bounty. I just smiled and said, "Come at me together." I did not wait for them to finish posturing, but my myriad tides domain erupted, sending a tidal wave of sonic destruction through the canyon that sent the lesser geniuses reeling into a dazed stupor, and I knew it was time to harvest. I surged forward as Yan Yi and Dong Huang attacked in perfect, lethal synchronization, and although fiery red and golden spear lights raked the canyon and carved massive craters into the earth, I was holding them off in a desperate 1-against-2 dance. Suddenly, a figure in white materialized Wang Zilu and unleashed a torrent of sword light, effectively locking them in place while she urged, "Fight your way out, I'll hold them." I did not waste a second, utilizing the martial god's swift steps to vault 100 meters straight into the swarm of 300 alien elites waiting at the perimeter. Blood-red twilight domain, activate. The setting sun surged to life, and because every kill now bolstered my attributes by 10%, I gripped my spear, channeling the four seasons and cold sun into a singular, rhythm-driven dance of death. Within seconds, the air was filled with a red mist of shattered bodies, and although Yang Yi panicked and slammed the heaven and earth cage down, sealing the canyon, I was in the zone as 10 invincible Dao bones charged me. Every thrust of my spear carried an otherworldly rhythm that tore through their domains like tissue paper, reducing them to gore in the blink of an eye. Dong Huang went berserk knowing he was next, so he unleashed 5 talent domains, the absolute domain, returned to void, freezing the very air, and gambled everything on a suicide move, cleaving mountains and seas. The force was enough to shatter reality, but I did not even flinch, letting out a simple, gray sweep of my spear, the prototype for annihilate heaven and earth. The world dimmed, my spear light sliced through his massive attack as if it were nothing, then sheared straight through him, and the invincible Dao bone of a level 1.3 civilization fell, cleaved in two. Task failed successfully, I thought, watching his light fade. Yang Yi's face went corpse pale, and he did not even try to avenge his comrade. He crushed a teleportation treasure and fled, abandoning his own followers to the slaughter. His black-dressed companion watched him vanish, her faith in him dissolving into nothingness as her last glimmer of hope died out. I did not stop, but turned into a whirlwind of violence, sweeping the canyon clean until not a single enemy remained, and the harvest of spatial treasures was staggering. Wang Zilu stood by the rock wall, beaming, and asked, "What? Are you going to kill me too?" "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice cold. She hesitated before whispering, "I've met Chen Zilu." My pulse jumped, and I thought that my mental health and my sleep schedule are in a toxic relationship, but this is a new level of insanity. If a third soul Wang Zilu had met my senior sister in the 5th soul zone, she could not be a main body, so I pressed. "This isn't your real self, is it?" Her face went ashen, stunned by my insight, and I did not have the patience to play games, so I turned my back on her and strode away, leaving her clutching her chest, staring after me with a strange, inexplicable longing. News of the massacre hit the palaces of the fire and black dust civilizations like a shockwave. Dong Huang was dead, Haiming was dead. King Ba smashed his chessboard as the fire civilization's pride shattered, while the black dust elders watched their hopes turn to ash, realizing too late that I was no longer a target, but an apex predator. Hidden in a secure alcove, I began the real harvest, for insights from hundreds of geniuses. The lifelong spearmanship of invincible Dao bones and billions of strands of star energy flooded my consciousness. I sat in the dark, refining the Luotian spearmanship into something truly transcendent. Deep in the star-boundary sea, the central divine temple appeared on the horizon, a beacon for the gods, and the peerless Dao bones of the level 1 civilizations were waiting there for me. Let them wait, I was coming. I sat cross-legged in a snow-swept valley, reviewing my system panel. For my true god, points were stalled at 70%, and my 9 luminaries, star-treading steps, and cold sun spearmanship were still shy of perfection. I had 2 months to bridge the gap to the 4th soul, and relying on one batch of Earth Spirit marrow would not cut it, so I needed more grade A opportunities, and although my toxic trait is thinking I can finish a 1-0-hour task in 20 minutes, here I was, grinding. Thousands of miles away, Yang Yi was a broken man. The once proud invincible Dao bone of the Skyfire civilization was frantic, his heart still stuttering every time he remembered my spear strike, and revenge was a distant dream because for now, he just wanted to survive. 2 months evaporated, and outside, Earth was crumbling. For level 7, shadow calamities were tearing through Dong High and Jishan. At the Federation headquarters, 1,000 high-level experts stood in frozen silence until Zhu Hongli, from Penglai University, finally stepped up and said, "Jishan is You Xing's hometown. I can't watch it burn." I remained blissfully unaware of the chaos, and by the time I reached the foot of Kanghuang Mountain, I found Wang Zilu floating in the air. "You again? Want to fight?" I did not even say hello, just summoned my spear. She stomped her foot, her face flushing, and said, "Who wants to fight you? I'm not here for the civilization key." "Then I'll ask again, is this your main body?" She went silent, pouting, and said, "Can't you be polite?" "Not stabbing an alien is my version of polite," I replied, ignoring her wounded expression. Before I flew toward the mountain, she threw a warning at my mind. "Don't join the Kangxu civilization." I landed in the mountain's core, where an illusion of the Federation being devoured played out before me, but I shattered it with a single, lightning-fast spear sweep, obliterating the silver-armored guards. Inside the main hall, the black-robed overseer appeared again. "The Kangxu civilization controls billions of star systems," he said, his tone oily. "Your potential is wasted here. Join us, and I'll send you to the Central Divine Temple. And you can take any tier, 5 opportunity you want." "And the price?" I asked. "Abandon your civilization, forget your family, become one of us." I felt a chill and pinged the white turtle, who gave me a one-word warning: karmic theft. Changshu did not want a genius. They wanted a leech to harvest my civilization's luck, effectively lobotomizing my future. I thought that my brain has 37 tabs open, and I can't find where the music is coming from. But the answer was easy: hard pass. I left and drilled into a hidden cave, for it was time to break through to the 4th soul. So I swallowed the tier, 3 opportunity, and the Earth Spirit marrow, but both attempts fizzled out against the mysterious barrier in my mind. "Didn't that little girlfriend of yours give you something?" the white turtle drawled. I pulled out the blood jade divine bark Zilu had left me, which still carried her scent, and swallowed it, causing divine power to surge like a tidal wave. I slammed my mental energy into the barrier, crack, and the shackle shattered. 4th soul achieved, my power skyrocketed 20-fold, and I was now a martial saint transcendent, my body tempering into a tier, 1 martial embryo holy body. I emerged into area 4001, where I heard a scream, and found Lu Shishi from White Dragon University cornered, her armor shredded, hunted by a burly 4th soul elite from the Haichan civilization. "Senior sister, leave him to me," I projected. I blurred into existence, my black dragon spear blocking the burly man's saber slash, and although he laughed, as our weapons collided, his confidence curdled into terror, and his arm exploded under the divine rhythm of my strike. He tried to bolt, but I was already moving, for he was not getting away. My myriad tides domain erupted like a sonic cannon, and the burly man's sea of consciousness buckled instantly, his defenses collapsing into a chaotic blur. That 1-second window was an eternity for me, so I lunged, my spear punching through his chest, followed by a violent explosion of blood and viscera. 2 strikes were all it took to put a mid-4th soul elite from the Haichan civilization in the ground, leaving Liu Shishi hovering nearby and blinking in disbelief as she asked, "2 strikes, just like that?" "Took longer than I wanted," I muttered, shaking my head, but I eventually relented and took the tier, 4 ginseng fruit she pressed into my hands as a thank you. As I absorbed the massive influx of cultivation insights from the dead elite, a roar tore through the horizon, and Lu Shishi gasped as her face drained of color. "They're here. The rest of the squad, they're all mid-4th soul experts." I gripped my black dragon spear with a cold thrill racing down my spine, and although my brain had 37 tabs open and I could not find where the music was coming from, my focus was razor sharp as 5 streaks of light descended with killing intent heavy enough to warp the air. Only 5, I asked, actually disappointed, leading Liu Shishi to nearly faint as she cried, "The leader is late, 4th soul. We're dead." "Stay behind me," I said, and without waiting for her to argue, I surged forward while my battle soul domain erupted as a towering 1,000-meter wave of blood. The myriad tides domain followed, pinning their minds in a mental vice, and before they could scream, I swept my spear, causing 3 of them to turn into mist before they even realized they were dead. The 2 survivors scrambled back with terror etched onto their faces, and the scarred-faced leader, a late 4th soul powerhouse, roared in desperation while throwing everything he had into 3 talent domains. I did not care, so I invoked the first ultimate move of the Luotian spear art, causing 84 suns to detonate in a silent, blinding flash. The leader's defense disintegrated like sand in a hurricane, and he hit the ground broken and weeping, begging for his life, but I did not blink. With a single flick of my wrist, I unleashed Nirvana heaven and earth, and the gray light bisected him, turning his treasure and his body into drifting ash. Liu Shishi watched, completely lobotomized by the speed of the slaughter, so I grabbed the spoils in her arm, commanding, "We move, now." Across the region, the leaderboard pulsed as He Tianzhu stared at my name, with eyes burning with a promise of death, while Wu Li, the Tao master of the fire civilization, watched from a volcano with a smirk, just broke through to the 4th soul and already crossing ranks to kill late-stage elites. Interesting. I look forward to meeting you, Earthling. I found a cave and dumped Liu Shishi there to recover, but I had no time to rest because the Civilization Divine Temple would open in 99 days, and I needed civilization sparks. To get them, I plunged into the martial Tao heavenly ladder to grind, and my consciousness plummeted until I opened my eyes in a filthy stable with my memory wiped. I was a lowly horse-breeding slave and nothing but a target for the local elites, and a spoiled brat whipped my shoulders, snarling, "Lowly slave, slacking off? I'll break your legs." Deep in my mind, a singular command echoed, "Challenge the sex holy maiden and trample her." It was madness because she was an ethereal goddess and I was a stable rat, but I had 30 days before the front lines claimed my life, and since I was dead either way, I chose to be a problem. For 30 days, I cultivated in the filth, and when the bell tolled, I walked out with a wooden sword and stood before the 7-color glazed palace to declare, "Slave Yuxing requests a battle with the holy maiden." The sect fell into a horrified silence, but when she descended, radiant and cold, I pointed my wooden blade at her throat, and boom, the seal snapped. The wood transformed into my black spear, and as the fog in my mind vanished, I whispered while shifting into a lethal stance, "So, it's just a test." I lunged, her long sword shattered the moment it touched my strike, and after I knocked her backward, I finished her with a single, brutal spear strike. The illusory world fractured, the 6th floor of the assessment crumbled, and a golden stele emerged from the wreckage, inscribed with, "Conquer Delusion." 3 new abilities flooded my mind, Delusion Conquering Bone, Martial Saint Domain, and Delusion Conquering Eye, and the latter was particularly invasive, as when I looked at Liu Shishi, I saw straight through her clothes to the hidden wounds beneath. She blushed furiously, and I quickly handed her some grade B healing items, telling her, "Senior sister, heal up, for in 7 days, we move to Ziwang Mountain." I swallowed 2 tier, 4 grade A opportunities, and the effect was immediate because my martial embryo holy body made refinement 10 times faster than normal. I could feel myself getting stronger by the second, a thrill that was better than any paycheck, and while my bank account and my dreams were on life support, my power level was booming. 7 days later, I broke into the mid-4th soul stage, my mental reach expanded by 50%, and I was confident that if I faced another late 4th soul expert, I would kill them in one hit. We reached Ziwang Mountain, only to be blocked by 7 late 4th soul experts from the Glacier and Shanghai civilizations, and Bing Hao, the leader, sneered, "This place is taken, turn back or die." Respectfully, absolutely not. "Senior sister, stay back," I whispered, summoned my black dragon spear, and charged. They stacked a dozen confinement domains to crush me, but I did not even slow down. I channeled my new eye, Bing Hao's mind shattered into a stupor, and I detonated 4 suns of pure power, obliterating their formations. Bing Hao panicked and used a treasure to teleport hundreds of miles away, but his 6 companions were not so lucky, and they died in an eye blink. As I absorbed their spear insights, a mysterious shackle blocked my path, the upper limit of heavenly secrets, but if I broke it, my spear arts would become a truly divine inheritance. High above, in the mysterious viewing space, the observers were losing their minds, with Jiwei arguing, 6 dead, 1 escaped. If You Xin meets He Tianzhou, he's finished, while Jiba laughed, I bet on You Xin, 2 pieces of Tao Comprehension Divine Jade. I did not care about their bets, so I led Liu Shishi into the canyon, guided by the white turtle to a hidden cliff cave where a fiery red vortex sat. "A civilization spark," the turtle whispered. "It's a trap set by a higher civilization to siphon karmic luck, but since they're likely destroyed, I can unlock the password and feed that luck to you." I reached out, the vortex vanished into my chest, and the world suddenly felt fluid, as if the universe itself was clearing a path for me. I cleared 6 more sparks without a single hitch, but when I hit the 7th, the white turtle cut me off, Stop, you're at the limit. Even a ninth soul expert would kill for that amount of luck. Suddenly, the tier 4 grade A superior opportunity matured early, and as we rushed into the valley, we ran smack into Bing Hao. How? He shrieked. Fate is rigged. Meeting me twice just means the Reaper is impatient, I replied. He tried to draw his weapon, but it shattered. My first spear thrust broke his guard, and my second punched through his chest. He reached for his emergency treasure, but his ring had vanished into thin air, and he did not even have time to scream before he exploded into mist. That's the weight of karmic luck, the turtle chuckled. Fate was decided before you even drew your spear. I uprooted 3 dragon saliva fruit trees and turned toward the sound of a distant clash where He Tianzhu and Bing Xuan were mid-duel. 2 invincible Dao masters? I grinned. Perfect. I intercepted He Tianzhu as he tried to flee, and though Bing Xuan did not appreciate the interruption and rained down a meteor shower of sword light, I swept my spear once, and the sky cleared. I was just getting started, and Bing Xuan's jaw hit the floor as his ultimate move evaporated under my spear, causing him to shout, "Run!" They tried to bolt, but I unleashed my martial Saint Domain, and a 10,000-meter zone of absolute suppression locked the air, turning their void escape arts into paper planes. I came, I saw, I forgot what I was doing, but then remembered. I was here to kill them. I charged like a berserker, spear dancing in a blur of motion, and I caught them in a rhythm they could not counter, forcing them to vomit blood with every clash. Bing Xuan went desperate and summoned a 100-meter sword that could carve mountains, but I shattered it with a single, brutal thrust. He Tianzhu then flared with a dark, suffocating aura, and threw out the 7th form of his heaven-severing spear art, not at me, but at the spatial seal, ripping a rift in the barrier and diving through. He Tianzhu, you traitorous rat, Bing Xuan roared, but he was alone, so I drove my spear through his chest and oscillated my energy until he detonated into a fine red mist, a pathetic end for an invincible Dao master blindsided by his partner's betrayal. I did not let He Tianzhu off easy, so I pulled my falling star bow and manifested 100 phantoms of arrows from pure mental energy, commanding, "Go." The arrows screamed across the sky, shredding his defensive barriers like wet tissue, and he burned through 3 life-saving treasures just to escape with his life, leaving a trail of bloody holes. He had lived, but barely, and next time, I would finish the job. I returned to the cave to find Lu Shishi trembling as she asked, "Is it done?" "Resolved," I answered. She stared at me, wide-eyed, for 2 invincible Dao masters were gone in a blink, and we spent the next 70 days holed up in a secure spot, refining the haul I had stripped from Ziwang Mountain until I broke through to the late 4th soul stage. "Look!" Lu Shishi shouted. "Myriad Spirit Black Gold. It's a tier 4 top-tier opportunity." We raced to the Myriad Spirit Mountain Range, where I scouted the area with keen observation and saw at least 10 invincible Dao masters already circling the prize, so we waited until the mountain finally erupted in a pillar of golden light. Chaos ensued as 100 masters tore into each other, sword light and blood filling the air, and I waded into the slaughter, my spear turning every generic genius in my path into a stain on the ground. Suddenly, a hidden sword strike lashed out at Lu Shishi, and I intercepted it, though the force still sent her coughing blood. I tracked the ripple in the void and thrusted my spear into empty space. Puffed, and He Tianzhu tumbled out, looking absolutely horrified as he gasped, "How did you find me?" He and Wu Li, a girl with fiery red horns, turned their domains on me, and my martial Saint Domain fought their blood sea and myriad tides, shaking the earth for 10 miles as I fought them both and completely dominated the exchange. "Wu Li is being suppressed," someone whispered from the back. 2 against 1, and he's still losing? He Tianzhu tried to trap me with an inescapable net of energy, but I did not even bother to dodge. I just thrust my spear, nirvana, heaven and earth, and the gray light silenced the world, shredding their domains like cheap cloth. They turned and fled, but I did not let He Tianzhu get a head start, so I pulled the falling star bow and let fly 100 arrows, all amplified by my star-piercing sword art. He tried to crush his treasures, but the arrows were simply too fast. In a heartbeat, they caught him, and he exploded into a cloud of gore. I absorbed the spear art insights like a sponge, realizing they were the final puzzle piece needed for my Lotion spear to reach divine status, and though Wu Li had vanished, I caught her on a communication link with her father, her eyes burning with a disturbing, sickly obsession as she said, "Father, I want to get yuxing." I had no idea about that little drama though. I returned to the Myriad Spirit Black Gold, where the local aliens had cleared out, keeping a 10-mile radius of don't touch me distance. I waded into the pressure zone and uprooted the crystal pillar, a wild thought crossing my mind. If I use Broken Mirror rejoined on this, could I turn it into an infinite resource? I wasn't just here to survive, I was here to monopolize the market. 10 days later, my sea of consciousness surged, and the True God Codex finally clicked into place. I was not just a late 4th soul stage fighter in name, I was at least twice as strong as I had been a week ago. The Civilization Divine Temple opened with a bang, and I stepped through the light door where Jiba, the Overseer, immediately tried to recruit me for Kangshu again, offering to back me until I ascended to godhood. Respectfully, absolutely not, I declined, because I was not ready to trade my autonomy for a corporate ladder. I entered the Divine Temple and faced the trial where 100 black-robed elites, all nearly invincible Tao masters, stood in my way. They were supposed to last 3 minutes, but I finished them in 10 seconds, and after the illusion test, a palace, a divine shadow, and a temptation to kneel, I took one step, the world shattered, and I arrived in the true heart of the temple. The master of the temple, Begu, appeared before me, and offered me a selection of treasures that would make even level 1 civilizations go to war: life dragon, divine stones, chaos, divine lotuses, and heavenly gold divine jades. My eyes locked onto the Hongmeng divine pearl, for Lu Zilu had sacrificed her own foundation to save me, and this was the only way to fix her. But just as I reached for it, the white turtle emerged, floating in a white-clad sword form, and asked, "Baigu, do you remember me?" Baigu went pale and trembled. "Lord White Turtle, You Xin is my chosen heir," the turtle said smoothly, "the sole core heir of the White Dragon civilization." Baigu did not just bow. He hit the floor and said, "Young master." He was so moved, he tossed every single divine object in the room toward me, then handed me the White Dragon divine weapon blueprint, saying, "This is the most precious thing I own." He spoke of the cosmic gods, 4 realms, each a chasm of power, and explained he had been trapped here for 9 millennia, with only 5 centuries left to live. I looked him in the eye and said, "Senior Baigu, give me 500 years, and I'll become a true god and bring you home." He laughed at the ambition, but I was dead serious, and although my motivation is currently buffering, I am going to make it happen. I had him track down Chen Zilu, and the projection showed her standing in another temple, debating treasures. She picked a talent-reshaping stone, but it was low-tier and useless to an invincible Tao master, meaning she had not picked it for her, she had picked it for me. My heart twisted. "Senior sister, you idiot." I had Baigu rip open the void, and I stepped through, appearing right in her temple. She turned, her eyes red-rimmed, and before I could even say a word, she threw herself into my arms, hugging me so hard it felt like she was trying to stitch our souls together. I did not ask why she had sacrificed her own foundation, I just held her. "Don't come over," she stammered, blushing furiously when she realized I was not an illusion. "Did someone bully you?" I asked, my voice stern. "I chose it for me," she muttered, hiding her face. "I'll see if it works later." "It's useless," I said, pulling out the Life Dragon Divine Stone and the Hongmeng Divine Pearl. She froze, so I did not let her argue. I grabbed her hand and dragged her back to my temple, for it was time to fix her properly. Chen Zilu caught me holding her hand and bit her lip, her blush deepening into a shade of crimson that rivaled the divine treasures around us, as she murmured, "We've already hugged, so I suppose holding hands isn't such a big deal anymore." Baigu had finished coordinating with the temple's master, securing an additional treasure meant specifically to repair my senior sister's fractured talent. He turned to me with a somber expression and said, "Regarding that horned girl from the Heavenly Fire Civilization, Wu Li, I'd like to sow a bit of good karma there, so should I face a tribulation one day, I hope you'll step in and lend a hand." I gave him my word, solemn and sincere, and Baigu looked between us with a faint, weary smile touching his lips. "It's time, for the cycle concludes here." I barely had a second to process his words or ask the dozen questions burning on my tongue before the space around us warped. The temple dissolved into light, and in a blink, the two of us were swept away into the shifting void.